Yo, is everybody there? What's happening? Am I live? Somebody say hi so I know I'm live. Because I don't have the other guys here with me. Although I'll go click on my thing and make sure it's going. Yes, I am. What's up? How's everybody doing? We got Troy already checking in and saying the thumbnail that I put up has a big ice cream shake, just like the fat man. He seems happy. He wants one. Josh Casey says, whoop, whoop. Rami boy, whoop. Boys. It's the boys cast. Did anybody see Douglas Murray on the boys cast? That was a pretty good episode with Ryan Long. Pretty darn good. I think Flip's coming in late. I don't think Jared's coming in, although every once in a while he pops in when he knows that he's not coming in, but he decided getting drunk was more important. Right after General Conference and everything, he's already choosing the wrong. Does he have like a CTW ring? CTW, choose the wrong. Unreal. That picture is a Norman Rockwell picture of current day people, but I put an Ozempic drug thing in the middle of it. Just because Jared was kind of going off on Ozempic, I thought he might be able to go off on it, but I don't think he's gonna come in. But the Ozempic in the middle of it, he's offering up. I guess Jared's met a bunch of people who are getting on the Ozempic. I don't know how you pronounce it. Anybody come across the Ozempic out there? The Ozempic, that's some new weight loss drug, although I think it was initially I don't even know what it was for initially, but it's supposedly become like some sort of designer drug for rich people to not gain any weight or lose weight, because it causes some form of gastroparesis, which is basically your bowels don't empty correctly, and that's all the craze. That's all the craze for the bourgeoisie. What was it originally for? Ozempic. It's probably something stupid like, I don't know, Novo Nordisk developed semaglutide for a once-week diabetes therapy. Oh, I guess it makes sense. It wasn't like a tangential thing like the blue pill. What is the woody pills? Those were like a heart pills or something like that, and it turned out to affect the nether regions. I thought it might have been something like that, but it makes sense that a diabetes pill worked on accident to keep people in shape out there. But that picture with the Ozempic I put in the middle of it, I don't know, the picture also reminded me of Leatherbys. Did anybody, it's not even a tradition anymore, maybe it is amongst a couple people, but it was, Utah felt small enough at the time and Leatherbys felt quaint enough that after any sort of priesthood session every Saturday, everybody who was LDS went to the Leatherbys. The sons and whatever all went to Leatherbys, which I guess was a locally owned LDS creamery around here, and it looked a little bit like that. It was all Norman Rockwell-y. I used to live in Norman Rockwell world a little bit. I got the taste. I only lived a little bit up the street, right from where what's that freaking movie called? The Sandlot was filmed. I could walk to the Sandlot filming area. So I slightly know what small town Americana feels like. And Leatherbys always kind of felt like that, like everybody going to Leatherbys after conference. And I don't know that it's a thing anymore, even though some of those Leatherbys are still around. I guess people still go, but Utah feels bigger, man. It feels more filled out. It feels like it's already gone all global homo, man. It's just not whatever it was or used to be. It doesn't feel that different than Vegas does. When I moved to Vegas for several years, it felt pretty strange because nobody felt like they were from there. Well, nobody was from there, and nobody was going to stay. But now even places like this start feeling a little bit like that. Everything starts feeling a little bit transient. Nobody's going to stick around. Everybody's going to fly off, and everybody who's here just barely moved in. I'm sure that's how it feels in parts of California and all that stuff. Flip's gonna be coming on soon. That picture was taken from. I found it. The Lotus Eaters did a podcast on it today that people are using AI to make memes these days. Maybe I'll look at some of them the same way that they did real quick before those guys get in here. It was this guy, Phantasmor. What's his name? Phantasm Tucker or something like that on Twitter. But he had this picture of the George Floyd riots, but done in Norman Rockwell stylings. I guess the Wall-E 3 was released, and now these things get made real easily. And now Bing is making AI images as well. Although I tried Bing out a little bit, and it went really slow. It just didn't even work for me. But maybe everybody's getting on there. I tried to make a couple pictures myself like this. But yeah, this this cracks me up. The Norman Rockwell George Floyd riots, and I guess that is too a little bit. Norman Rockwell George Floyd riots. Cat lady, a crazy cat lady, Norman Rockwell style. Man, and what do we got? This us basement dwelling troglodyte gamer gators, except in the 1950s style, using the old automatron and old timey junk all over the floor, junk food all over the floor. Man, a typewriter, a picture of the typewriter on the wall. That's pretty cool. But let's see where these guys are. I want to get into the stuffs, man. What else we got here from this guy? Norman Rockwell family walking down a homeless, a street full of unhoused people, I guess is the proper word for it. And that's the one that I pulled from, and I stuck the Ozempic picture and where that guy's mangled hand was. Is that a mangled AI hand? I think it is. Whoa, it's a mangled AI face behind it. Man, I covered that up with the Ozempic. But yeah, this guy does look happy. Well, he's got a bunch of ice cream in the bucket too. I didn't even realize that. And maybe Ozempic will work for him if he gets on it. Well, our current day schools, the pink-haired teacher, and the flags. Tent City, Norman Rockwell, Tent City. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, I tried making some myself, but they did not work. So, is anybody out there? Flip should be here any second. How many people out there watched I see that we got some people listening, but not many commenting yet. Anybody watch the general conferences this week? Everybody all caught up on that? Me too. Let's see here. So I was just recently, or very, very recently, listening to some stuff by Lynn Kenneth Packer, the reporter who had been doing the most on the Tim Ballard stuff. And did anybody else watch? I'm covering this a little bit now because I don't know that I'm just going to spend forever on it once Flip gets here. But did anybody else follow the Glenn Beck thing? The Glenn Beck thing on Tim Ballard going on? Sunday session. Somebody watched Sunday session. What up, Flip? Flip's in. He's joined up. So I was just barely starting to talk about. I was going to get into general conference, but I was just talking about just barely watching. I don't want to do a ton of Tim Ballard tonight, but first I saw Glenn Beck started talking about him. Did you see that at all?
No, I don't think I mean, other than what you guys talked about in the group, I don't think I watched any like Mormon stuff or even associated things.
Miss Connie watched 9 hours of conference. Wow, I watched RFM and Nemo cover most of it. I did not see that much of the actual conference. Blue Meanie Exmor World is unusually reporting conference was atrocious. Yeah.
They say that every time.
Yeah, well, the thing that I don't know, I'll talk about that when I start pulling it up. But the Glenn Beck segment was that Glenn Beck had gone and interviewed all the same girls that one guy did, and he got a notification from their lawyers. He interviewed them, and he says that he has it all on tape, and that he was going to reveal it. And right before he was going to go on, he got a cease and desist by the lawyers. But then he also said that, you know what, you guys can't do this. Like I can still release it.
Yeah,
And,
like because I didn't think that like.
yeah, he said
That's not a
I
power
can
the
still
law has.
release it. So he's gonna give he said he's gonna give him 24 hours, and maybe he would release it, but he was going to say, I want you guys to give me permission yourselves. But he's pointing at that it's looking pretty nasty for Tim Ballard, and
Yeah.
he was sideswiped by it, and he had no clue what was coming, and he had a third-party investigator from his team who
Glenn
wasn't
Beck.
him. Yeah, Glenn Beck had a third party investigate it. And he said,
Wow.
I want the truth. I don't want this coming from me. I don't want to be too close to it. You just find the truth and you tell it to me. And it looks like he's coming out saying, looks like Tim Ballard was scuzzy. And it's all signs are pointing to it 100%.
Because like everything so far is like he didn't do anything like illegal. He didn't do
No.
anything like shisty money wise. He was just a sexual creep.
Well, the shystiness is really actually kind of aligning himself with the church. Like it's shysty.
Oh yeah,
to
I
the
guess
church.
that's shisty. Yeah.
And then the second part is like there's a little bit of shystiness, although I think I'm pretty sure most people aren't aware that most NGOs or 501c3s do this, but like he had some parts of private companies that also worked with the 501c3, but that stuff would have been easily searchable at any point, because like the private company was how he was trying to make a Netflix show out of it. He couldn't make a Netflix show with the 501c3, and they were tied to each other financially, and you could do strange stuff with that. Like there's like, I don't know that there's any proof, but you could do stuff of like where some of that money from 501c3 gets paid to your for-profit place, and then you don't have to account for where that for-profit money goes, type deal. But it looks shady to people that they're even paying each other, if that makes any sense. So that's the worst of that. That's the worst of the financials, but yeah, it doesn't look illegal-ish. Just maybe a little bit underhanded. But what it's looking like is that he went all the way with these women, and not only all the way, maybe even like use some stuff of like telling them like, hey, the church condones it. M. Russell Ballard gave me a pass, type of stuff deal. And I still stand by that those women are dupes if they thought that was true. But
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what it's looking like there. But you want to know what one of the crazy things is? It's letting slide. I heard on this Lynn Packer thing. I'm gonna pull it up here, but I'll put it in the things. But everybody might have heard it. But this talked about their actual financial ties, and the church is trying to skate away that M. Russell Ballard was not financially wrapped up in that, and he was. But what's even worse than that is going through like the history of M. Russell Ballard. M. Russell Ballard, I didn't realize this, got into penny stocks and was like the Wolf of Wall Street guy. M. Russell Ballard got rich off of that same crap, and he got sued by the FEC for it, and all this sorts of stuff. Like this guy just sounds like he was shady or into whatever. Like he wasn't duped by Tim Ballard. Like he might have been the type of guy who's like, yeah, let's do this, but who knows if he was still that way. But at least one point in time in his life he was. But that's all in Lynn Packer's reporting right there. Yeah, that guy completely got into penny stocks hard in his life, which is
I had no idea.
Yeah. I had no clue either. And that sucked. But so getting back to the most important religious thing of the week, did you follow the Synod on Synodality?
No.
Do you know what the Synod on Synodality is?
No.
Anybody in the chat? The Synod on Synodality. The Synod on Synodality is the Catholic Church is holding meetings to review it's basically to review how they do chastising in the church. It's kind of like reviewing how we do courts of love in the church, or things that if we will even punish or not, those types of things. And what the synod is, because it's normally just a synod, is just generally like the council. It's a meeting of bishops where they know they're going to vote on all these types of deals. Now they're doing a synod on synodality, so it's getting all meta. But one of the things that there supposedly is going on with it, I mean, maybe I'll play a little bit of this clip right here, is that it's straight, the stuff that they're going in and talking about is straight up like how to or should they annex in a bunch of left-wing things into the Catholic Church. 3 of them being basically kind of like ordained women, signing off on giving blessing to gay marriage, and tons of global warming stuff. And I don't even know how that stuff plays in. And there's, of course, like the articles about it say conservative Catholics pounce. So that's what every single article says on it. But let me see if I can play this little clip of a thing right here of one of the things that's trippy about it is they say that it's closed door, and Pope Francis also said it's lifetime ban on talking about it, or you could be excommunicated from the thing. Yeah, it's wild. Where'd it go? That's not it. Here it is.
Synod and synodality. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Top cardinal from China is warning the synod in Rome is being manipulated. Join us with the latest from the Eternal City Church Milton's Rome correspondent, Dr. Jules Gomez. Jules, one of the most famous cardinals in the eyes of the Chinese Catholics is rallying synod bishops to push back against what he calls a manipulation of the synod.
And yes, Brad, Cardinal Joseph Zen's letter is getting considerable attention. Now, remember, this is one of the most gracious men of God we have on the planet. Not only is he a prince of the church, but he's also somebody who has stood shoulder to shoulder with the suffering church, with persecuted Christians. And he himself has been persecuted for a very long time. He warned against the China-Vatican Accord, and now he's warning against the Synod on synodality. Basically, what he said is that, there are people who may dismiss him as a conspiracy theorist, but he said this, but I see clearly a whole plan of manipulation. This is his letter dated September the 21st and published yesterday by The Pillar. Cardinal Zen explains why he considers this to be, a chess game of sorts. He says the synod organizers begin by saying we must listen to all. Little by little, they make us understand that among the all are those whom we have excluded. He then goes on to explain who these excluded people are, the so-called sexual minorities, LGBTIQ, etc. And then Cardinal Zen says, often they claim not to have an agenda. This is truly an offense to our intelligence. Anybody can see which conclusions they are aiming at.
So this is an article in the Washington Post. If you look at it like right here, it says conservatives dread the synod on synodality. That's the way they report on stuff, man. It's story of my life.
It's so funny.
But the thing that they point to that's strange about it is it used to just be like these top like 360 bishops vote on the thing, and now there's somehow like 60 women voting on it, and they're like, how did this happen? and they're just in there
one of those things just
bishops.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch of other like groups, like very specific left-wing groups who are getting invited in to vote on it. And they're like, well, we don't want to say it's a conspiracy or anything, but I listened to this channel called Rules for Renegade and Jay Dyer, and they're both, well, one's Catholic and one's Orthodox, but they're going off on it and saying this has all just been like laid out and was going to be part of the whole thing ever since Vatican II and all that stuff. But it's funny. It's funny to watch. I saw Dan Ellsworth pointing to it and saying, "Hey, watch this. Watch what happens to the Catholic Church because it's going through a ride." It'll be interesting to see.
How long does it go on for? Is it gonna be like Vatican II where it goes on for years?
They could. I don't think there's a set thing, but I think it could just be also like a couple weeks too, and then they'll reveal. But people ultimately said it sounds like the ruling that they'll say is like our doctrine and scriptures are eternal and all this stuff, but we can give blessing to a gay marriage or something like that. It's gonna be all this kind of postmodern language to now accept the new thing. That's what's gonna happen. However exactly it comes out. Miss Connie was a glutton for punishment. My family's very Mormon, so I need to keep up. Oh yeah. Did you? We're gonna get to the general conference stuff, but has anybody followed what happened with the black menaces on the BYU campus?
No, I don't.
It made national news.
Oh yeah, that's right. I don't think I watched that clip you sent.
It's been 2 weeks, but the reason I want to point to it is they referenced it on Nemo's show multiple times, like it was some big major crisis that had gone on there. But the black menaces claimed that they were getting harassed on the BYU campus. Harassed. I'll pull it. Just give me 1 second. Have you watched any Black Menaces videos of their normal videos?
No.
So
they're what? They're just a woke activism group, right?
Yeah. So they do TikTok videos, and what they do is they kind of corner kids at BYU.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen some of these. Yeah, they struggle session them real quick.
Yeah, they ask them questions that they know that they're going to be like put in front of the world about, on just like, what do you think of gay marriage? What do you think of anti-racism or something like that? And then they know that they're just going to, like, when they hum and haw and don't know what to say, and they put it out to the world, it's going to embarrass like the BYU kids or something like that. Come on, where was it, man? Holy cow. So they put out like a whole man, that got back there, man. We share so many different things in one single week or two that here it comes. Share the screen.
Share.
Our editor-in-chief, Jacob Christian.
You hearing it?
Yeah.
Was featured on a few videos put out by the Black Menaces. Once again, the Black Menaces have brought their deceptive tactics to BYU's campus and have sought to humiliate and degrade BYU students through their social media channels. In his recent video, Sebastian had a lot to say about this and a lot of claims to make, so we want to talk about it.
Before we continue, I just want to clear up a few things. Yes, I'm a student. Been a student for too long, in my opinion. Also, it's not against the rules to record, unless one, you're making a monetary value from it, which I'm not, or I'd be rich.
All right, let's start off with this screenshot from one of their videos filmed on BYU's campus where they are advertising their merch they're selling for money. Here's a secondary screenshot of their link tree. So it has a button to sell their merch. It has for donations, obviously soliciting for money. Here's the thing. If the video they were filming at that moment wasn't expressly trying to make money through their merchandise or whatever, the point of you having a media company and having this platform is so people go to your links that you have tied to the social media account, hence trying to get money through their merch or donations. All right, let's move on to Sebastian's second claim from his video.
Or two, it's political advocacy, and I don't do political advocacy.
Okay, John.
Change
That's
or
John
create.
Dehlin.
I don't even say anything.
I'm not sure how many people are buying this claim towards non-advocacy. The whole point of the Black Menace group is to catch BYU students in traps and show that there's bias or racism at BYU's campus. That sounds like advocacy to me. Second, this is their bio. As we can see here, their tagline is "The revolution will be televised." What revolution are you televising if you're not actively seeking change? Also, keep the solicitation for business or media inquiries. All in all, I guess we can be glad that Sebastian prefaced that he doesn't want people to threaten, stalk, or bully anyone involved in this incident. But keep in mind, he did post this 3 days after the original video was posted. Turns out, though, saying that 3 days after the fact doesn't stop people from threatening violence, like hitting someone in the jaw, but it also doesn't stop you, the Black Menaces, from liking that comment threatening violence. Aside from the fact that the Black Menaces continue to violate BYU policy, Black Menaces make videos and content that often results in the ridicule of students, BYU, and the church.
So that got picked up by NBC News from the Black Menaces side. So you see this report from NBC News right here. A member of a group of Black BYU students who regularly share on social media video interviews with white classmates says he was confronted by a university staff member while conducting an interview and was harassed by a classmate immediately after. And do you want to know what they did? Is they came up to him with a camera and asked him for an interview.
Of course.
Yeah. The thing
These
that
guys
they've
are
been
so
doing
transparent.
in front of everybody for years and years and years. Anyway, I just wanted to point to that as we go to listen to Nemo real quick. And those guys, they give their report on the general conferences. Did I already lose it all? No, I did not. And this is just a quick aside right here, but listen to them talk about it.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on it. I actually thought that the talk, kind of the way you've addressed it, Nemo, the theme of it wasn't about real acceptance. It wasn't really about pluralism. It was about assimilation. So the entire talk was about, following this example that supposedly the church has said or the church leaders have said, and they just haven't. Like you highlighted, like there is still prejudice in the church. Like literally just this week, it's been reported in national news that BYU was harassing one of the members of the.
It's been reported. And
Nemo, you're hardcore truthy guy, right? You're super truthy guy. This whole thing's been about finding truth and getting to the bottom of truth stuff. There was a complete little bit of misinformation on your channel right there. That's bullshit, buddy.
Yeah, that guy invented a racism. NBC blasted the racism, and you're here finalizing the circle by repeating the racism. There you go. Like you've just conjured a non-existent racism into the world.
Yeah, and this might be laundered down because this guy's just getting it as it gets dumbly reported down the media.
Yeah.
The way this stuff gets laundered through the media, which has been some of the point of why people have been slow to take the Tim Ballard reporting as legitimate, because we have to go slow nowadays because there's such hacks in the media nowadays.
I saw a report about how, there's some mayoral campaign in Tennessee, and all the reports are, like white supremacists and show of force. And because it used to be like 25, 30 years ago, if Washington Post or NBC did a report about a white supremacist group popping up somewhere, I didn't have to guess whether or not they really, really actually were some kind of white supremacist group. Now it's I have to go check.
Let's wait 3 days and see what the actual story is. That happens to me constantly. And no, I did not have to used to do that. Maybe I should have back then, but I've got a couple other different stories where the media was full of crap again this week, and but maybe we'll get to them, maybe we won't.
NBC stories because 99% of the time when they accuse somebody or something of being white supremacist or whatever, their source is the ADL or SPLC, and then that's like an extra layer of
laundry.
Now I've really got to check because those guys have been caught smearing people so much nakedly political reasons.
Let's look at this one real quick. I mean, this is a little bit off subject, but I'll go to Glenn Greenwald right here, and he is
this whole thing with the Canadians, like they're acting like this was the worst thing in the world. It's like it was obviously an oversight. and like this idea that we need
Yes.
to like reconfirm, like, oh no, like Canada is still against the Holocaust, everyone. Like,
Yeah, but part of the problem with the whole thing is that, man, I thought this one was. Do I have the right spot?
because,
I
yeah,
think
it's
I
like
do.
the guy really, it's just an association. There's no.
But that's the point here, right here, is now Politico comes out and says, well, not all
Not all Ukrainian partisans that allied themselves with the Germans to fight the Soviets.
well,
were
what they said
Nazis.
is like there were good people on both sides. Okay?
Oh,
Like,
there were fine people.
there
on
were
both
fine
sides.
people on both sides. The
There were fine
Politico,
people in the Ukrainian communist and Nazi parties. Fine people.
Politico comes out and literally says there were fine people on both sides.
I mean, the fact is that it's true. You know, like.
Yeah,
That's
you
like
said
I
it
said, I
last
don't-
week. It's just you guys aren't allowed to be nuanced thinkers like that because you were the ones who
Yeah.
pissed all over nuance.
Yeah, exactly. Because like it's not that crazy to think that, you know, I mean, again, like if the Soviets have destroyed your home and you want them out, and the Germans show up and you say, "How can I help?" and they say, "Here's an SS uniform," you know, like, does that mean that you're buying into all of it, or this is your chance to go fight communists?
And it was your
You know?
only options at the time frame.
Yeah.
And comparing Putin to Hitler. This year, they're defending Nazis and saying you can't hate someone just because he swore allegiance to Hitler. For generations, the U.S. empire has been manufacturing a cultural obsession with the Second World War in order to frame all subsequent wars as, quote, good guys versus Hitler guys. Then the millisecond that framework becomes inconvenient, actually the Nazis weren't all that bad if you think about it. And that's exactly what is being done here. This has been what's being done since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Remember, the
Is
Azov
it
battalion was on
irony
the
that he's
official
wearing
list
a
that
brown
Facebook-
shirt?
Oh, dog
Kind of seems a little
whistle.
too on the nose that he's wearing.
You
that.
hear dog whistles better than I do, man. This gay guy who lives with his husband in Brazil
Yeah. Who's old enough
is
to
a
remember when
Nazi.
this Who's old enough to remember when Glenn Greenwald was a hero of the left?
Yeah.
maintained of hate groups you are not allowed to praise. If you praise them, you would be kicked off the platform. The minute that war began, Facebook exempted the Azov battalion and said, actually, you're not allowed to praise it. In other words, this group that until 3 seconds ago was a Nazi group and a hate group that you're not allowed to praise, they're good to go. And over, people in the West when they went to venerate Ukraine or herald Ukraine, ended up praising Nazis, which is what happened in Canada. It's not because the majority of people in Ukraine are Nazis. They're not. It's because there is a faction in Ukraine, particularly the people who are doing most of the fighting, who continue to maintain an allegiance to the collaborators of the Nazi regime and even to Nazi ideology. And instead of having a conversation about the presence of Nazism in Ukraine the way we did right before the war, when war propaganda starts, the truth dies. And we are now at the point in the name of the war in Ukraine of reading articles saying that actually there were two sides in World War II. And just because somebody went and fought for the Nazi SS doesn't mean they're a bad person. That is the way in which this war in Ukraine is engulfing everything. And the fact that we are now at the point where we're getting Nazi apology from mainstream outlets like Politico reveals just how warped and deranged this war has made the West.
Let's see. Back to Nemo. So Nemo's been on his honesty kick while he's been dishonestly trying to get a temple recommend, which I will call him out for that too. I mean, don't be dishonest in your dealings with other men, Nemo, especially not when you're on a high horse. And there's a time frame where I gave you a high horse. Like I commended the way that you took on Dallin H. Oaks, and Dallin H. Oaks not being forthright with when he was the president of Brigham Young, if there were conversion therapies going on under him at Brigham Young at that time, and then being confronted on it again and just not backtracking on it at all. But you lose the high horse real quick when you guys just, well, you know, you guys will lie. I mean, maybe I'll pull it up in a minute, but we had that whole thing where Dan McClellan ran into Steve Saylor this week, and Steve Saylor is a guy who crunches numbers, and Dan McClellan is hot to make guns the mortal enemy of the people. And Steve Saylor pointed out to him some certain things, but some of those implications were the racist, and that's where you see that data. As soon as like something goes against my narrative and I can use racism, here comes the race dogma, racism dogma. Oh, data loses dogma back.
Yeah, that data is incompatible with my dogma.
Yeah.
So guess who wins?
And I get to get out of it by just screaming, "You're a troglodyte, knuckle dragging racist."
Yeah.
But so, did you hear Russell M. Nelson's talk?
No, what's the controversy there?
So this is one thing I want to point out about listening to ex-Mormons, maybe a little nitpick with RFM. But RFM was reacting in real time, kind of reporting on these. And when RFM listened to it and reported back, a bunch of the stuff was like, hey, yeah, whatever. Yeah. This is the same old burger, Rusty. This is the same old burger. But then by the time it came around to Mormonism Live and he saw like the community had reacted, like he dove into that with them. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yes, it was the worstest, terriblest. And but a couple of the big things that he said, the one that's really got people upset is, well, I guess I'll play it here. They don't have the clip, they just recite it here. So
I'm gonna get vulnerable for a moment.
What's that?
No, let's go ahead.
Gonna get vulnerable for a moment here, because he says when someone you love attacks truth, and I'm thinking of family members of mine that view me as someone attacking truth. Think celestial, don't question your testimony. In the latter times, some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. There is no end to the adversary's deceptions. Please be prepared. Never take counsel from those who do not believe. Now, that statement taken in isolation.
That's the statement.
Never take counsel from those who don't believe.
Within that context is dangerous. Again, you've got people who are like, oh, I'm not going to, because he hasn't qualified it. He hasn't said when it comes to matters of the spirit, he hasn't said, he's just saying, don't take counsel from those who don't believe. That taken by fundamentalists and run with leads to not trusting doctors, leads to not trusting teachers, leads to this sort of isolationism and really unhealthy in-group behavior.
I don't think he needed to give that much of a qualifier, although I don't think it's a great statement.
No, it's a dumb thing to say for sure. But yeah, I don't think he's saying like, that anybody could walk away with the interpretation like, oh, well, my doctor is not a Mormon, I'm not going to take their advice.
But you can definitely, because like I saw like Dan and maybe Kevin like qualify, and I would agree with this qualifier. I was like, maybe don't take counsel on matters of your faith outside of Mormonism, which a bunch of people would still disagree with, but you can give them like a pass on that. But take counsel. I mean, I even like stopped and looked up like, what's take counsel? You know what I mean? And it's just, it's just give advice, And part of me kind of half goes like, part of the problem with the exmo world and all that sort of thing is you graduate from religion or you come out as gay and it suddenly makes you king of giving advice.
Oh yeah.
But because part of me is a little bit of like, I got nobody to give advice to. I mean, sometimes I'll bark advice out into the ether, but I like if I'm talking to Kevin on the phone or something, I very rarely say, Kevin, this is what you need to do. You need to read your scriptures, man. You need to pray. You need to, you need not pray. You need to turn to me. And I don't really give my friends advice like that unless it's real specific. Like you've asked me some kind of particular things about things that have to do with my profession. And it's still, it's not, I'm not going to say you must go do this or you should do this or that, but so getting upset that they can't take counsel, I can get how other ex-Mormons get upset at that because I hear you guys constantly giving counsel and telling people shoulds and oughts and shoulds and oughts and shoulds and oughts out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
the divorce guru.
Yeah. But I'm not going to say it's like a zero. Like the point they're making is not a zero. There are big enough nuts out there that some of them will take it like all the way, and when you're on that level, maybe you got to qualify stuff like that. But years ago, I might have brought it up before here, but there's this TV show called The Real O'Reillys. Did you ever see The Real O'Reillys? Stop me if I've said this before.
I don't think so. It
was this really crap. It was kind of on around the time of The Real O'Neills, not The Real O'Reillys, The Real O'Neills. It came out a little bit around Modern Family type stuff. It was like on after Modern Family type deals. and it's about this kid coming out of the closet. But the story is this kid, it's actually the life of Carlin. What's his name? Dan Carlin, that gay guy. I mix him up with the hardcore history guy. They might have the same name. Dan. Oh,
But it's escaping me too. Dan Carlin. Yeah, isn't it Carlin?
are they both Carlin?
I don't know.
Dan Savage.
Oh, that guy.
Dan Savage. This gay kid is Dan Savage. I mix up the last name with Dan Carlin of Hardcore History. Sorry, Dan Carlin of Hardcore History. It's supposedly the story of his youth. Well, what is that guy? Dan Savage is he's like a who are the old advice columnists? He's a sex advice columnist, but
And Landers.
Yeah, Ann Landers, and there was some other lady who was kind of popular for some years in between there. And so in the show, this kid is just a numbnuts 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid or something. But then the second he comes out, it suddenly gives him all authority to be the arbiter on all subjects of the world. Like, I don't know, like, wait a minute, why is he the judge of the world now? And everybody comes to him for advice on everything. It's a strange thing of like, maybe it's just particularly the show because the show was about an advice columnist or something like that. But I do think there is like some sort of weird thing in the social justice world that like, I've announced I'm gay, now I'm arbiter of all truth, because I mean that is part of their epistemology. You know?
Yeah, no, I mean it's when James Lindsay talks about that it's basically a Gnostic cult. That's an example of it where they're like, oh, I have seen through the veil. You know, back when I thought that I was supposed to be straight, I was in the system, but I broke through and I see reality now. And that's why I can give advice about things that are way outside my ken, you know?
Yeah, this is Dan Savage right here. And he started a sex advice channel, and he's been at it so long that maybe he's got some credentials at it now. But I remember from the beginning of it, he had no credentials. He's just like us. Like, but I'm a gay guy, and now I'll give sex advice, you know what I mean? And do it on a podcast and get big enough to where I don't know what, you know.
Whole job now.
Yeah. Christopher Rice says he has some pretty strident things, if he remembers correctly. Well, that TV show was about him coming out when he was young and then becoming the advice giver of all stuff. But even in that show, I go, well, why? What gave him, like Flip said, the Gnostic truth to have answers for all things, for all people, all of a sudden because he came out? And it's so weird. That show got canceled, thankfully. But I think it was just a really good example, if you watch that show, of because a kid came out, now he is I don't know, kind of like how you have a, what would they call it, like the mystical black guy, like in bagger vans and that sort of stuff. He's like a trope. Like the gay person is now the advice giver of all things.
Yeah.
Kevin says I get all my spiritual advice from Chris. Rusty's gonna hear about that. Dear Abby, yeah, that's who I was thinking of for sure. I used to read here and there just because I'd get so bored. You know, now we didn't have Twitter and culture wars to keep me entertained back then.
Remember newspapers?
Yeah, sometimes. Leatherbys and newspapers, man. We can't help but get nostalgic. Has anyone heard from Jonathan Streeter lately? He hasn't posted on YouTube. Yeah, we heard from Jonathan. We heard he did an interview with Marty, who comes on here just yesterday. But Marty sometimes she edits, and so it takes her a little bit to release them. But look for that pretty close. But he's just been chilling. He tried to like whip together a couple things. In fact, though, I don't know if I should tell Tells out of school or give you, but watch out. He's got some Russell M. Nelson stuff coming.
Yeah.
Nemo is walking a tightrope trying to stay on John Nolan's coattails while staying true to his truthiness quest. Yeah, well, I don't know, because I mean, sometimes when I listen to that stuff, like they're just ready to buy some narratives that part of this whole entire thing that I don't get is supposedly people left Mormonism because they got doubtful of people telling them truthy stuff of this boomer regime that tells them all the truths from on top. And then they triple in to the statism where the lies are 10 times more obvious and 10 times more propagandistic and 10 times more controlling, you know, like it's out of the frying pan into a endless Dante's Inferno fire. And I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me. Next to the funnies. Yeah. So anyway, back to counsel. Like counsel. Even StreamYard. Let's go back to Nemo's thing.
So
and then they get predated upon by Tim Ballard and all these other affinity fraudsters.
That's okay. So that's one of my questions. If I'm going to throw a wrench on this, and I did kind of toss it out on Thoughtful Faith, although not many people interacted with it. But maybe for a reason, or maybe it just got swallowed down the hole, or maybe I didn't word it very well. But people who listen to me on here, I'm pretty charitable to the LDS Church, you might say, or you might think, maybe sometimes too charitable or something. But Nemo's in and I'm out.
Yeah.
And if you follow Nemo's channel here, his whole entire thing, and follow him on John Dehlin's stuff, he's got ATC, activism against the church, big time. Whereas I have live and let live with the church, leave them alone with the church type stuff, as far as they leave you alone. And Nemo does not take that up. In fact, Nemo is activistic in trying to expose whatever he can expose. But under Rusty's, if we were taking the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law, you can take counsel from Nemo and you cannot take counsel from me.
Because they're detached from rational analysis, from information that will protect them, from the ability to critically analyze anything.
And I know what the answer is. Like, don't take counsel from either of us. We're both dipshits.
And therefore they become incredibly vulnerable to anyone who sounds like they're churchy. You know, and seek guidance from voices you can trust, from prophets, seers, and revelators.
I was thinking that was Jared doing an impersonation for a second. Oh, why don't you people from you can trust? So part of the other thing that the RFM and those guys got into about this was he kind of referenced the concept of the TK smoothie. Do you know what the TK smoothie is?
Oh yeah, it's the idea that unless only the exalted that go to the celestial kingdom will have genitals in the resurrection.
When did you first hear about that?
Original Mormon expression.
Really? I heard about it on my mission.
Yeah.
There was one guy who was kind of like deep into esoteric stuff, and he told it to us on our mission, and I was like, what? Well, I guess that makes sense. Yeah. You know, I didn't believe him that it was actual stuff from the church, but I believed that it followed. Like, oh, that follows, I guess, you know. But these guys are saying it actually comes from what's his name? From Joseph Fielding Smith.
The TK smoothie. And if folks have never heard of the TK smoothie, it is called the TK smoothie because it is the terrestrial T, K, kingdom smoothie. And this goes back to a teaching. Now, remember the Elder Oaks quote we played just a minute ago, where gender is eternal in the premortal, mortal, and postmortal lives. It's why Elder Oaks says we are unable to change our doctrine to accommodate the LGBTQ community. But Joseph Fielding Smith in Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2, RFM, would you like to read this?
Sure, absolutely. By the way, I did read these shortly after I got back from my mission, if not on my mission. So I was familiar with this, and it makes perfect sense within the Mormon paradigm.
Yeah, it doesn't make perfect sense.
To add. So here's what he says. And by the way, this is just a collection of his teachings and other writings or speeches he gave was made by his son-in-law, Bruce R. McConkie, as a homage to his father-in-law. In both of these kingdoms, this is Joseph Fielding Smith, apostle, prophet, church historian, the Book of Mormon answer man for everybody in the 1950s and 60s. In both of these kingdoms, that's like I think you said, the T and the T, the terrestrial and telestial. In both of these kingdoms, there will be changes in the bodies and limitations. Whatever do you mean? He goes on. Some of the functions in the celestial body will not appear in the terrestrial body, neither in the telestial body. And the power of procreation will be removed.
How would you remove the power of procreation?
Because
if people have genitals, they're going to do it.
In case he's not hinting hard enough, he goes on. I take it.
So the TK smoothie, the terrestrial kingdom smoothie, it's having being like a Ken doll in the terrestrial kingdom is the concept. And I did hear that one on my mission, although I'd never heard it before that from anybody else. But I guess it was written in here by Joseph Fielding Smith. But I mean, I guess the concept follows if like all those kingdoms were true. But the reason this came up in Russell M. Nelson's talk is that both he and Oakes kind of alluded to something that Jacobs said recently, is that you will be comfortable with the kingdom you go to no matter who you are. Like,
yeah, that's something I heard. Like, I remember learning that when I was young, is the idea that like you go where you belong. You know, you're not going to,
and you'll be happy.
Yeah, you're not going to be out of place there. That's the whole point, is you are where you belong.
But these guys kind of throw the wrench in that, saying like, well, I don't know how much of us, at least knowing or feeling how we feel now, will be that thrilled to go to the terrestrial kingdom if we're going as Ken dolls. But you're claiming that we'll be down for it if we're the types of weaklings that we are, who aren't set up for exaltation. We'll be down for the TK smoothie. But that's all extrapolated. I mean, that's all stuff that follows down the road from the concepts more than being directly said. Charles Wagner says, the problem that I have with the whole don't take counsel from non-believers thing is because I had several Mormon friends who immediately saw me as a threat to their faith simply because I left. Yep. That is true. But on average, ex-Mormons are kind of a threat, and if it is to faith in a sense. But
I mean, he's not wrong. They are
not all of them.
You are a threat to their faith.
Yeah.
You know.
We used to talk about what was going on in their lives, and they regularly asked me for my input, but they stopped immediately when I stopped believing. Yeah. Typical script. Take some vague quote and make it seem like that is what is taught at the pulpit weekly. Yeah, I mean, the TK smoothly thing is it requires extrapolation for sure. Like I said, it all follows, but I don't know how blatant any of it was. Although, I mean, I guess Joseph Fielding Smith said right there that it could be blatant. That's why I have a hard time being charitable toward the church when they put that message out. They create unnecessary rifts between otherwise good friends. Well, for me as well, and I know a couple people have pointed out on here, because we'll get a little bit obtuse or quick in our speaking and say, hey, just leave the church or something like that. And in each of our cases, it's a little easy to discount because there's not a rift in a family there. There's not a rift with a wife there or something like that. And we forget that sometimes. And that'd be hard. And I actually know it's hard, because if you listen to the pinned thing I have on here, a gal Kevin actually introduced to me forever ago, and I dated off and on for like 10 years, and she was LDS, and I ultimately couldn't marry her, not because I couldn't follow word of wisdom stuff, not because of stuff, it's just because I couldn't pull a Nemo and lie or whatever to get into the temple and demand that they let me in the temple, because excommunicate me or put me in the temple. I said, no, I don't belong in that temple because I don't believe like you're supposed to believe if you go in that temple. And that was the only thing holding us back. And it ultimately ended up leading to us saying, we just can't work this out, because I can be everything but that, but somebody who lies about like that sort of thing. And man, I mean, it was a long, hard, difficult thing all the way through the whole thing, and it just ultimately didn't work because of that. But I sometimes forget that some people are already married and happily married when the whole thing happens.
Yeah.
And but one of the things that would run through my head at that time is, well, what if we have kids and my kids go in? I mean, I know that how you think and you ultimately feel, and this stuff just kind of like runs off your shoulders or something like that. I saw a meme of they put it on Mormon Stories of like the way ex-Mormons watched General Conference, and it like shows like these people with all these binoculars and writing every single thing down. And it says the way Mormons watch General Conference, it just shows a bunch of people sleeping with their popcorn. And that was, he listened to any of it because he just slept through most of it, and he found them all to be boring boomers type stuff. And that's really generally true of most of them. They go back and listen to it and pull out what they can or not. And it's definitely true of my family. I think they just kind of take it in one ear out the other. But in my mind, I sat and imagined, what if I had a kid and my kid was part of the deal was she could be with me and my level of belief if we got into that temple and all that sort of stuff. But the kid's you shut up around that kid. And beyond shutting up, if the kid goes and hears something like that, you shut up to that. And that was just a thing in my head. Well, maybe ego got in my head there, but I was like, nope, not doing that. Not putting up with that sort of deal. But who knows how it works with kids either. I mean, Flips had a kid who's still liking him a whole lot when he had parental alienation going on up the wazoo. But I wonder if we do live after this life, and if everyone compares notes to the next life, it would be interesting to watch and see if anyone got anything right. Like one thing. That's a good one, Steve. I don't think there's one. I bet you maybe I'm in the ballpark of a couple, but that's about it. It's complicated and weird and difficult. My wife is still active, believing, and never, ever. Oh man! But how does she act
you
towards
have
you?
like the things that the only thing you're right, like everybody gets a prize for the one thing you're right about. Like you get a prize for diet and exercise. You know, like I'll get a prize for correct. I'll get a prize for knowing which Star Trek movie was genuinely. Like you
What
were
if
right.
I get there and they find out that like what was all that time wasted on exercise? You need to tell me about what happened to the Borg season 5, episode 7. You know, like, oh no. Man, that sucks, Charles. That's tough because you're already in it. But I mean, it kind of depends because there's a little bit about the personality of that gal that I was dating, which once again, there's stuff about her that kind of puts me in weird Forrest Gump of Mormonism space because her stepdad was one of the persons who puts out all those books about Saudi Arabia and Nephi's stuff through the wilderness there. And she's related to one of the apostles, and she could have married me, the apostle of Synod and whatever. But my wife is strangely cool about leaving it up to the agency, but I'm the one who carries the guilt about our kids not being bad. Well, what does she think about that though? Like, is she upset about it, or does she take that stuff to heart? Because there was some stuff in this conference about a little bit kind of taking a hard line of, oh, if you think it's all going to work itself out because your family's separated and people in the higher kingdom can go see people in the lower kingdom, think twice about that. And they did kind of talk that way a little bit this time. It came from Bednar and this other guy both kind of like hinted at that. There was some guy who said, after you get baptized, it's not like you're really washed of your sins. And I was like, what? You know, but so much the church is boring and fake, and I'm a believer, not LDS.
That's one thing. When I was a missionary, I remember that's like I tried, like consciously tried. I'm gonna really, really try and focus to paying attention to conference, and you can't do it. It's so boring.
Well, one of the things, because Carden straight out said, I don't have clips of it. You can go listen to it. It was on his live stream. He said multiple times that it's just boring and hard to sit through and listen through. And maybe they'll come back and, he ultimately apologizes for it. But more of what he said is like, that stuff's boring and I can't stand it. And in the same episode, they started talking about how do we get the young men back and how do we get all that stuff. And you stop and you think, well, maybe one of those paths was the Tim Ballard arena or something like that. Then you sort of got the Midnight Mormons, but really the truth of it is you got those every 6 months, very, very dry old people talks. And I don't know. It's
when I was still pretty young, like I would have these, like, this will be the conference where they say something new. That's the thing I was always waiting for. Because, like, it's a church with Revelation. I was thinking, like, okay, like it's been a few years since Revelation. We're due for a new one. And I just remember thinking, like, all the way up until I left, like having this little bit of hope, like the Revelation's coming this time. Surely this time we'll have a revelation. Like, no, it never happens.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that was kind of interesting, and we kind of made some jokes and got into it with the actual man at large about, it seemed like Down-Aged Oaks backed up Jacob Hansen over Jim Bennett this week. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, Jacob Hansen from Thoughtful Faith argued with Jim Bennett, who might soon to be my councilman, who I had a back and forth argument with this week about it. They had a debate on the Proclamation for the Family, where Jim Bennett said anybody who puts Proclamation of the Family stuff up on Twitter is Desnat. And he thinks holding on to that proclamation stuff is gonna. He definitely just believes that somehow they're gonna get past that whole thing, or it's going to be worked around using postmodern interpretations of words. That's how I'd regurgitate what his blog claims on that sort of deal. But well, let's see what these guys say about it.
Again, we'll
Elder
talk about
Oaks.
this.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Elder Oaks, who took a break last conference to repeat mind-numbingly just sequential random sayings of Jesus. That was his entire talk. He took one conference off from his favorite hobby horse, but now here he is back again with a freaking family proclamation and the one line in it that is, in my opinion, first off, it's new doctrine. I did an entire show on this years ago when it first, well, not when it first came out, but when one of the times he was banging the drum on it. Yeah. And it's just like he's making doctrine out of nothing at all. It's the one line that he always quotes from it. And in my opinion, there's no doctrinal basis for this line. But this is the one line that is the obvious anti-gay line sentiment that's put in there. And my belief is this is the one line around which the rest of the proclamation was written.
So I just anti-gay or like anti-trans.
Yeah, that too. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Anti-different people.
Pro-straight.
Yeah.
Pro-cisgender. So just FYI, whatever you just said there, the last minute and a half of what you said, we're going to cut that and we're going to place it on the back end of this conversation, because this is actually the one quote on the kingdoms and what laws get followed.
So it pushes back that same thing of everybody will be comfortable in their.
So the gender issue is attached to the Nelson thing at the end.
Yes.
But this is a new doctrine, I think, and we'll talk about this as we get to the end of this one. But
yeah, they're referencing again that everybody's going to be comfortable with the kingdom that they land in. I forget which exact quote.
All right, so then the last one here, we're going to play one more bit from Elder Oaks, and this was the one that you were talking about, but the famous money line from the Family Proclamation that this guy can't say enough of.
Who wrote it?
That was from the
we'll
TV show.
We'll set the stage for this conversation. Here we go.
Revelation, God has revealed the eternal laws, ordinances, and covenants that must be observed to develop the godly attributes necessary to realize this divine potential. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints focuses on these because the purpose of this restored church is to prepare God's children for salvation in the celestial glory, and more particularly for exaltation in its highest degree. God's plan, founded on eternal truth, requires that exaltation can be attained only through faithfulness to the covenants of an eternal marriage between a man and a woman in the holy temple, which marriage will ultimately be available to all the faithful. That is why we teach that, quote, gender is an essential characteristic of individual premortal, mortal, and eternal identity and purpose.
Okay, so he teaches that gender is eternal through the pre-earth life, mortal probation, and in the eternities, regardless of what kingdom you get, because he doesn't distinguish between a celestial glory versus a celestial terrestrial. No matter what, eternal. That is the point of the Family Proclamation that he makes over and over again, and that sets up this conversation because that seems to be very different from what Nelson communicates, and that seems to be very different from what another prophet in the past has communicated. But Nelson being in this very one, and so let me grab.
So there's some people who claim, and I would put Jim Bennett among these ones, although Jim Bennett keeps saying that's not what I think, which is what I think he'll say to any postmodern Jim. Will say that to anything where you call him out for the thing that he said, but or the implications of the thing that he said. I think they all think, you know how we used to talk about Thomas S. Monson, the Boy Scouts were going to die with Thomas S. Monson, and people knew that for years. people say the proclamation is going to die with downright jokes. That's what they really, really feel that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's not outside the realm of possibility, but
says members all fall asleep during conference. The Q15 uses Gen Con to get the ex-Mormons to talk about certain subjects. That might be. Yeah, like a psyop. Yeah. Judo. My wife told me I have the spirit. I could listen to conference and know which parts were important, which parts I can ignore, other parts I don't like. So it's like some sort of gift of discernment in that stuff. I like the pipe organ. Yeah, the singing's all right, but once again, Christopher, you're listening to Jim Bennett there, and ew. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, one of the things I got into it with Jim Bennett years ago about just on accident was I somehow mentioned that the choir wasn't as good as it used to be, and he popped off about that and started cussing at me, and I wasn't even
your mother's balls. Was that was
yeah.
your mother's balls?
Yeah, your mother's balls, and he dropped the F-bomb somewhere in there. Yeah,
that guy.
But he shows us how to have proper online, amicable, charitable discussions. I think it's fine and funny. I told him that's fine and funny, but I'm going to remember it for when you get on a high horse, because I know you'll get on a high horse.
Yeah.
Conference speakers look and sound nothing like prophets. Wow, that's coming from somebody who's never been in the church.
What's a prophet sound like? Yeah, like what's your point of reference there?
Yeah, I guess we never heard one from the Bible actually talk. Didn't they say like Paul had a high voice? Isn't that like written somewhere? I'm Paul. I'm Paul. Jesus is a killer.
Somehow we know Paul was bald, right? Isn't that a thing? I don't know how we know that, but I feel like that's like a thing that people know, is that Paul was bald.
All right, let's see it. I don't know. I don't know for sure, but I swear I heard stuff like that somewhere before. But man, General Conference stuff. They claim that one of the guys talking about not worshiping heroes was a direct rebuke of the Tim Ballard stuff. Although I don't know that it was.
Yeah, it could be a lot of things.
Yeah, I think like all things that talk was approved months and months ago.
Yeah,
and that sort of deal.
Yeah, I wonder, like, is there like a last minute emergency talk editing option?
I'm sure. I mean, like, especially if like somebody dies or something, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So, anybody have anything else to say on the conferencey stuff? Was there some sort of a controversy in there I'm missing or forgetting? I don't think I am. Those darn Mormons, those dang Mormons. But I do feel like for Charles, I feel bad for him. Like if you're somebody, because as a husband, being upset that you are, like, somebody tell me like you shouldn't give Kevin counsel. I think somebody just telling me that in general could be good advice for me. like you're no advice giver or something like that. But telling a husband you can't give advice to your wife, which I know isn't the exact implication of that, but it's also not there. Yeah. Like a husband should be able to be in a position to explain to his wife. I mean, we get in it so we can mansplain. That's why we're there, And how can we not mansplain to the wife and have a happy life? But in all honesty, yeah, if some woman took that seriously, she can't take counsel from her husband. Eee. See, Prophet said crazy shit and acted pretty well. That's true too. Yeah, that's one of the things that I've noticed too. Like when people say Joseph Smith did this and that and the other, I'm like, well, did you ever look at what David did in the Bible? Did you ever look at, there's wacky-do stuff in there. But it either disqualifies all of them or just him. So, you want to talk about general politicky stuff?
Sure.
Do you see this stuff that I won't play a ton of clips, but Coleman Hughes had his TED Talk censored for talking about race and talking about colorblindness.
And talking about race in an unapproved way.
Yeah, and TED, which had hosted other sort of racial things in the past, censored his talk, removed it, and said if they wanted to put it back up, there had to be a debate beforehand that they put before the video. And it, but what was
like
interesting,
that bumper in front of Gone with the Wind. Somebody had to go and tell us that, just warning.
yeah, exactly, because he said he believed in color blindness in the system and all that sorts of stuff. And to this day, they still have not put the TED Talk back up. This is it right here. It's just him pushing or arguing for color blindness. But what's funny is at some point or another, the CEO or whatever of TED gave kind of an honest press release, and he said, you know what? At some point in time, we were pressured by all these different companies that we had to jump on one horse or the other, and we definitely jumped on the progressive one. Sorry, we had to make a choice. Everybody had to make a choice. And
wow.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll be able to find the exact clip, but it's here in this Glenn Greenwald interview with him if people want to catch that. That's one dumb thing. Another very dumb thing is did you look over this false rape accusation claim that happened to the pitcher?
Yeah, I saw some of that with the text that came out. And that's the thing, is that because that one was obviously particularly brazen and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But because that's just the whole thing. It's there's no way she's the only one that had this thought of I've got a way to get rich, and it's destroying a wealthy person's life using sex and sexuality.
What? Charles said my wife's bishop told her explicitly to not let my thoughts influence her. Whoa.
Well, then marry the bishop.
That ain't good. He's about 5 foot. Are you talking about Paul here? 5 foot high, very dark hair, complexion, dark skin, large Roman nose, sharp face, small black. Are we talking about Paul, or are we talking about the small black eyes, penetrating his eternity, round shoulders, a whining voice? And then it almost resembles the roaring of a lion. That's actually from Paul. Where did you get that description, Steve?
Is that from the Gospels? I don't remember. Where did you get that idea?
I didn't read it closely enough. I read the whole Bible once, so I'm an expert on it. But really what that was is I spent every morning reading 2 chapters, and most of it went in one eye and out the other eye, if that's a phrase. But yeah. I read the whole thing.
You're doing it in English and Spanish?
No, I did do Jesus the Christ in both English and Spanish. And
I read Jesus the Christ twice on my mission. I read the Book of Mormon once.
Yeah, I think I only got through the Book of Mormon a couple times, and I got through the Doctrine and Covenants. My last 130, whatever. How many are there? The last days, that amount of days of my mission, I read them in reverse order all the way down until I left my mission, because I knew there was only 100 and something days left. I can't believe the bishop's saying that, Charles. That's I would march in and give that guy a piece of my mind. I really would. Say, don't say crap like that, dickhead. Take this counsel from me. Take this counsel from my 2 fists. Joseph is describing Paul. He said Joseph said that.
Oh, that's Joseph.
I was regurgitating false news that Dan McClellan doesn't believe. Dan McClellan doesn't believe that Joseph Smith guy. How could I regurgitate that? Let's look at this.
Next victim, star pitcher for the Dodgers. A text Lindsey Hill sent to a friend before she ever even met me. What should I steal? She asked another, in reference to visiting my house for the first time. The answer? Take his money. So how might that work? I'm going to his house Wednesday, she said. I already have my hooks in. You know how I roll. Then, after the first time we met, net worth is 51 mil, she said. Bitch, you better secure the bag, was the response. But how is she going to do that? Need daddy to choke me out, she said. Being an absolute whore to try to get in on his 51 million, read another text.
So she admitted ahead of time that the choking that she would later claim was a violent attack was actually just a ruse to scoop the guy's cash. And it sure looks like this ruse was a lot less violent than she claimed at the time. Because remember, the allegation was a visibly beaten face with photos to prove it. Well,
Here's a video she took the morning after the second violent encounter, looking completely unscathed and, in fact, very satisfied, presumably about a plot well executed.
This video, which was taken by Lindsay Hill herself the morning after she claimed she was brutally attacked, emotionally traumatized, and desperate to get away from me. You can see her lying in bed next to me while I'm sleeping, smirking at the camera without a care in the world, or any marks on her face.
Okay,
Somebody
well,
needs to do the juxtaposition of that video with Scarlett O'Hara.
When she got, yeah, because that's true. Scarlett O'Hara showed that same happy face. Yeah, you could help make the case for her lawyers. Well, let me show you this exhibit. Scarlett O'Hara after being raped. Like, oh yeah, that does look like a rape face, I guess.
Maybe he beat her ass after that video, you might think. Very unlikely. As Bauer explains, video data and phone location data show she left right after recording it.
And now we have the metadata, so there can be no dispute. It was taken mere minutes before she left my house on the morning of May 16th, 2021.
Yay.
Has there been any response from the usual suspects, like in the media and feminism?
No, I guarantee they don't even know
story?
the story happened or mention it, you know.
Like, there's not even like the Rolling Stone, like, well, it's okay to lie about it because it does happen sometimes.
No, as far as I know, there's not even mention of the whole
They're
entire
just not
thing.
even going to go with it.
But beyond that, this guy lost his career from it. He's been out of the
Yeah.
league for 2 years for that. He's
How much
been
did that
pitching in
cost him?
Japan. He had
Like $50 million?
He had $120 million contract that he got.
No, that thing is
dropped
because,
for.
like, you know, because he can sue her, but like she's got no money, obviously.
She
you know?
should go to prison. She should go to
But that's
prison.
like
for
that's the
that
thing.
crap.
So no, yeah, no, exactly. She belongs in prison for sure. That thing's like, even though he won, he still lost everything. That's the thing that's so sick about it. He won, but somehow contrived to lose because of the system. Because the patriarchy strikes again.
Patriarchy. Let's see. Charles says, I know you guys tend to be more charitable toward church, and I've learned to come around after being out for several years now, but my experience with leaving the church was rough. Very rough. What area were you in? And I've never started going back again on occasion because I miss some of those folks. And I've even started going back on occasion because I miss some of those people. I was at a repeat. And sorry, Scotch is making me feel extra chatty tonight. If you don't want us reading this stuff, we won't read it. But I believe that some people had rough times getting out. I mean, there's dickheads.
Yeah.
out
Oh
there.
yeah. But that's like with like leadership, for example. When I was on my mission in the mission field, I encountered a lot of bad leadership. But I can say, like, my leaders for my entire life, all of my bishops and stake presidents, all my leaders up until my mission president were excellent. They were all excellent. I've got no complaints about any of them, you know. But, you know, like I said, but I have seen shitty leadership. I saw it on my mission. I absolutely did. You know, and I kind of got into it with some bishops on my mission for that reason, you know. I just
Yeah, I
remember
definitely saw dickheads out there, and there was dickhead missionaries. You know, we all called them Pharisees. You
Well, because
know.
that's the thing, like my mission president, like I like the guy, but like, you know, I've told this story many times before about like the moment I lost my faith in priesthood authority was because of that guy, you know.
And I'm more than sure that some of those ladder climbers in the current bureaucracy of the church were those same exact dickheads. I mean, it kind of shocked me on my mission that I found out. My mission, the first president, he would put slackers into AP positions. They were you know, what's the word for it? Kind of like exuberant slackers. Like they were people who had like good personalities, but they knew they're struggling. He said, well, I think you'll do good if we gave you a leadership position. And there was one guy, he was the AP of the dang mission, and the guy took a van around basically most of the country, and everybody found out that he drove all, and that's like leaving the mission entirely, and went and got around with all these different women and stuff, and didn't even get kicked off the mission for it. But that was my first president. Then the second president, we know that like a bunch of those different guys started siphoning off money, and we stopped stopped putting like any sort of money or any sort of thing of worth in any of our letters and stuff like that, because it had to go through the mission place, and that there wasn't the president, but there was guys in the office who were doing that sort of stuff. And but I found out then with that second guy that a bunch of guys who became AP and zone leader were the ones who lobbied for it. Like if they went in and begged and said something to the, like, it never would have crossed my mind to go and ask to be moved up or be put into a position. Like, that's not how you do stuff. And then when you found out, like, you saw these guys who were kind of weasels, and you knew they were weasels. One of the guys actually, I think, left years later and came and like apologized to me for being a weasel. And he was never exactly like a weasel to me. He just was like, he knew that we lived in the same apartment, because in Mexico City we had such small areas, we could all like group up, and there was a bunch of times we had 8 missionaries in the same apartment. And we knew he, as a zone leader and a ladder climber, wouldn't leave the house. He'd stay in the house all day and say that he had planning to do, and that he had some sorts of ideas or things. And we were out on the road constantly. Like I was a killer on my mission. That's all there was to it. Like I was out and going hard. That's all there was to it. The whole entire 2 years, I followed the dang rules. And part of the reason I followed the dang rules is in Mexico City is I thought I'd die if I didn't. Like if I stayed out past 9, or if I like went and dicked off in some place, I'd probably end up getting stabbed by somebody. So just sticking to it was the only way to make it kind of go fast and not be dangerous. And but I ultimately ended up becoming like a zone leader in like a small area, but it was like, it seemed like an afterthought type thing. Whereas these guys who were little weasel ladder climbers all got moved into like leader positions, and you'd be like, what that guy? and it was constantly the exact guys that you'd look at the end of it, that you found out that just went and lobbied for it and asked for it and said they needed it for this and that and the other, and they got moved up into it.
I remember thinking something was an eye opener on my mission was that the most powerful person in the whole mission field was the elder that had the calling of managing the carpool. That guy had all the power, and some of those guys used their power for sure. Because Miles, like you guys didn't have cars at all in Mexico City, did you? Did like even the AP?
No, we didn't have bikes. Even we didn't have anything.
Yeah,
it was all.
The thing is, like, and so because I was in Northern California, like most areas, you had to drive around, and but the church, the mission was incredibly stingy and tightly controlled the miles. But the car elder, like, it was just things about getting like a newer model car versus an older one, and there was so much like backroom dealing, with that guy, because he had the power. It's like, oh, do you want the brand new one with the power windows, or do you want me to give you the oldest, shittiest car in the fleet? Make it worth it to me, basically. Like, and so like they'd get favors, they'd get inside information. It was just amazing to me because, like, and I remember being struck by that, where it's like, like I've said before, like a large part of how I lost my faith was that I went on my mission and I just saw like, oh, it's just a business. Like it just works like every other organization. Like it was literally an office with cubicles. Like it was in a strip mall. The mission office was in a strip mall. It's like, and I don't know what I was expecting. I was just like, oh, it's just like work.
I had some preparation for that. My dad, who was a 35-year church office building employee, in fact, at one point in time, he was working with John Dehlin's brother, and they were in charge of the entire IT department over at the church there. And he told me from when I was young, a lot of people lose their faith when they go to the church office building and find that it really kind of runs like a business. And we've kind of pointed out and gotten a little bit into the managerial revolution of the church type stuff, but I guarantee it sets up a little bit. I wouldn't put 100%, but I'd put a high number in there that ladder climbing works, and doing stuff like a ladder climber or a managerial class person and lobbying for stuff.
Nothing in our mission
does advance it. If it worked on the mission, it works there. And
because like in my mission, the APs were not the most faithful, hardworking elders.
No,
They were the best.
lobbyists.
Well, in my mission, it was the best fakers.
Yeah.
They were
well,
just
that same
they
deal.
were just really, really good at appearing to be faithful and hardworking when they were anything but. Like, I remember at one point it was something like, because we held it over his head, that like at one point, like we had a photograph of our AP in a swimming pool. And so it was just like, and it was kind of nice for us because like, don't pull any shit with us, man, because like we got dirt on you, and so like he was an ineffective AP for that reason, because he was afraid to do anything because he knew everybody had shit on him.
How much of it do you think? Because I was listening to some stuff just today on Jacques Ellul, if anybody's ever heard of that philosopher. And that guy talks a lot about technique, where he's talking about it is like he's talking a bit like technocracy. But one of the technocracies he's talking about is some of that managerial class. Like when I went to college, after a while, like I was in a communications department, I have an undergrad in that, and then some other areas, but even in HR, you go and learn these processes, and it seems like everything that people have done is just laid out in books, these technical processes, and given technical names to all these things that probably didn't need technical processes and need technical names. But the whole goal behind all those processes of we're going to label out in this book, and it's almost kind of like the guía misional, the mission guide, and the stuff that we were given to like kind of follow through these steps of these managerial things. The whole entire concept is that we're going to make something here that it doesn't matter who's in this position, they're doing the same things and making the same decisions. That's the whole point behind that managerial. You go to college and everything's just, we're going to learn these processes and call these processes these things. Not like you go to the real world and anybody remembers all those lists of managerial names of the things that we called in the, like in HR, if we talk about like some process, it's why those dumb tests get hard, because they give names to these processes that nobody actually uses in the real world. But the idea behind the whole thing is that the human is the cog and the managerial process is making the decision. And as much as like I went on the mission, I was just plugged into a thing that my job was already done for me. You know what I mean? I just had to go do it. But here's the list of stuff you do. Here's the list of stuff you say. Here's the list of stuff you choose. Here's the list of stuff you act. Here's how it's all done. Here's the managerial process. You go do it. How much do you want to bet that's just true turtles all the way up? You know what I mean? Like no matter what process you go to there, it's already laid out, right? Exactly what you do. We don't want you thinking too much about it. Just follow the managerial process that we've put in a 20-point presentation and given names to each one of the things. I never really saw shitty leadership until he started interfering with my family, and my wife is too meek to tell them to cool it. Man, Charles, I'll go wring their necks for you, man. I'll go wring their necks. Like, give me a name, Charles. I'll go wring their necks. Like none of this. Oh, gee, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing John Dehlin stuff. Like, we'll put action behind this, man. Action. When I left the church, I mean, that's me too. Nose of the grindstone. Yeah. Vegas, man. So here's a story. I was in Las Vegas with a couple of my friends. One of my friends, once again, I'm just going to say it at random because it has nothing to do with this. But once again, Forrest Gump me, that friend ended up in the NBA. But we were in Las Vegas and we were just hanging out there 1 month before both of us were going on our mission. And it was like July. And we were sitting there frying by a swimming pool in swim trunks. And also we were frying. And right then we were just like, ugh. Two missionaries go riding by in like full suits on bikes. And we were just like, we're not going. We are not going. We're not going. Just like, you know. So you might have been that missionary I saw ride by that day. Maybe we crossed paths that way someday. Did you ever ride by in 127-degree weather in full suits down there?
I went to a shitty mission, but I did not go to the shittiest mission by a long way. Like Las Vegas would have been nightmare.
That would have been hard.
Because not only like is it just a shitty, boring place, but like like I've said a lot of times that one of the issues with my mission was that like where I was a time and place in America where like there was nobody we talked to didn't already have an opinion on the church. You know, it was burnt over, as they say. Like, it's just that. Like, there was for being not in Utah and being outside of the Mormon corridor, pretty high proportion of Mormons. Mormons had already been there for 150 years. And, you know, and then on top of that, all of the evangelical anti-Mormons operated out of there. And so, like, yeah, it was just simple. Like, everybody already knew, and there's nothing for them to hear from us. You know, like, would you like to hear about a message of church? We have already. Thanks. Oh, all right. So, like, we just had nothing to do.
Yeah. So I watched a video of my little nephew on his mission in DC right now, just this past week. And they made a video of the whole mission, and he appeared in it a bunch. So they got to send it out to the families. And it's just like a day in the life of the missionary. And I got to see what the day of life is, somebody stateside. And it looked so luxurious to me. Like, they had in Mexico City, my bare feet didn't touch the ground for 2 years. I didn't dare put my bare feet on the ground because we heard like all these ringworm horror story type stuff, things or whatever. And we were in shitty little shacks sometimes. Sometimes it was okay, but there were some times where my place was a cylinder blocks and a piece of plastic was the roof. And we'd wash sometimes in just cold waters out of bucket type stuff. We really had to do that sometimes. And we washed all our clothes by hands, all that sort of stuff. And I was watching that luxury, and I was thinking, like, you guys have no idea how easy we had it. You know, all that luxury would have made my mission a nightmare because we didn't have that luxury, and we were just off kind of roughing out doing that sort of stuff. It took up time. And then people talked to us and let us in, and it took up time. And very rarely did we look down at a schedule with nothing to do. Like, I watched them cooking their meals. I'm like, we never cooked a meal. But there was like 2 weeks in my whole mission where I looked down at a schedule of not much, and I wanted to jump off a cliff. And that only happened like 2 times. And I was looking, I'm like, you guys, it was easy and lucky to be in the shitty place.
Oh, yeah, because like one of my apartments, we had a garage, we had washer and dryer in the unit, we even had a fireplace. Like, it was, you know,
it would have been terrible. It would have made time go so much slower.
But it was like it was also in that area. Like, that was the day. I mean, I bring it up so many times because it's burned into my memory. But like, there was a day that we went out all day. Like, we did the whole thing like you're supposed to do. We were out the door by 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whatever it was. We were on the street, and in an entire day, in, like, you know, it was a suburb of Sacramento. It was a pretty dense area. We spoke to nobody. And in a whole day of tracting, of walking around town, of going to the park, just going anywhere where we try to encounter somebody, we talked to nobody.
Yeah, even you guys had a car, you had a bike. We didn't. What did that mean? Took time to get there. You know what I mean? Like, that really did count to like fill the brain space. If that makes
in my
sense.
first area, it was like, I remember thinking like it was insane. Like, because my companion, you know, like, I don't even think it was a thing in Mexico. Did they have the advertisements on TV where you call the number and get the free VHS? Like, was that even?
No, we didn't. We got some stuff from like a temple. Like, we had a temple there, and the temples would get some recommends from some areas. So we'd get like these guys. They came to the temple, and those were almost always busts.
But I remember like one day it was my trainer, and like at the time I'm like, are you nuts? This seems like such an unbelievable waste of time. And then I realized later why he was doing it. It was like I said, because it was a way to actually fill a day. But we biked 15 miles out of town to deliver one stinking VHS to some family who, like, it was really obvious that it was like some kid who's like toll-free number, free video. And, you know, kids are just like, oh, okay. And like, and I just remember, like, we spent all day biking all the way out into the countryside past 10,000 farms, you know, and then it was like later on in my mission when I was in, you know, the suburbs, and I'm like, I kind of miss being out in the country where we could just spend a day cycling.
It was time.
You know?
Yeah. So my mission, like, each of our areas were pretty small. 1 or 2 of them were so small, I joked they were like the size of Salt Lake Community College campus.
Yeah.
They'd get kind of knocked over and stuff like that. But if you had some sort of thing where like one was, we had appointments. You guys didn't have appointments. Every day we had appointments this way, this way. But sometimes it'd be on this end of the campus, this end of the campus, this end of the campus. And not most of the appointments, like most missionaries, were busts, although we had a lot of them work too. But if we just had this one little space and we had one that was over there to walk to, one that was over there to walk to, one that was over there to walk to, but all three of them weren't there, that still took up the day.
Yeah, that was, I remember, because they really pressured us about the planner. Use the blue planner, fill up the blue planner, and for us it was like such a depressing thing, just because some of the missionaries were really imaginative in finding ways to fill that up, despite the fact that we had nothing to fucking do.
I have proof. I have living proof. I don't know where it is, but I have proof that I dotted off every half hour of my mission.
Yeah, like for me, like it was normal. It was normal to have one or no appointments. Like when we do the weekly plan, if we had 3 appointments, that was like a huge week for us. If we had 3 in a week, that would have been a big week.
Sometimes I'd look at my planner and it was done. Like we start on Tuesday and it's scheduled out, and you'd be like, well, this week's gonna go fast at least. You know what I mean?
And those 3 appointments might not even be time actually spent in an appointment. It's just that, because 80% of the time we get there and they'd be like, yeah, elders, we're not interested. Bye. And it wasn't even an appointment, but it's like it was a destination and then we were done. We could check it off, but like, I mean, I remember
it only happened to me like 3 times where I looked at that planner and there was nothing. And even those weeks, because we were where we were, it would end up getting filled up. But there was only like 3 times where I looked at the start of the planner and there was nothing there. And I remember that those were some of my lowest feelings. And it wasn't the low feeling of like, gosh, we're not doing good or something like that. It was, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. This is so boring. I'm so sick of this. And there's nothing to do. And what am I going to be doing? I had to think about this in my head. 3 months, 4 days, and 6 hours from now, I'm going to be doing this. Like I just pick random times in the future. Like I can imagine myself and torture myself in that way. Like I if anybody ever does cardio, I do a lot of cardio, and you do these weird things when you do cardio of like counting down the minutes, like, well, in 7 minutes, there'll only be 12 minutes left. There's like these dumb little things like that to like pass the time. I did that in my brain the whole 2 years in endless ways, and it was torture. And it would have been 5 times worse if I was in a luxurious place with a car to get the places fast, with a bike to get the places fast, and an open schedule. I would have gone crazy.
It was really rough. I'm glad I went on my mission, but I did not enjoy much of it.
I'm glad I learned a lot on there and got the Spanish stuff. Although there's sometimes I wish I didn't speak Spanish, to be honest, to be dead honest.
Yeah.
He says Charles says he worked real hard his first year and gave up the second year, and then baptized more when he gave up. Well, I think that's true. I actually think I baptized less because I was a stickler to all the rules, and everybody kind of figured that out there. There are guys who kind of cut corners or kind of did more to. I actually followed hard rules of I wouldn't be overly. People would tell me that they'd find out that I was like a jokey, funny guy. And it was a little bit like how I am in my HR life that Flip knows about, that like I was dead serious doctor, scientist man when I was talking with an investigator, because I took seriously the thing of I don't want them to fall in love with me and my personality. I want them. I must be serious, quiet guy, and it must be spirit with that stuff. So I'd be very friendly with members and jokey and that sort of stuff. But if anybody was an investigator, I was okay. We must be serious persons, because it's not about us; it's about the stuff. And all sorts of people got tons of baptisms out there just by schmoozing people, tons of them.
Yeah, no, because I mean, at the end of my mission, that was one of the many little things that stuck out in my mind that kind of messed with my faith. Although at this point at the end of my mission, I don't know, intellectually I was most of the way out. But I remember like we had an investigator family, and it was like a single mom and 5 kids, and there was like 8, 10, 12, 14, 16-year-olds, something like that, And I was the district leader, so I did the interviews for baptism. And so like, I don't know if you guys did the thing where once a week you'd have to call into the office and basically do your report or
Yeah, we
like
did.
the baptisms, And I say, okay, so yeah, we did the interviews, and Mom, Jimmy, Billy, Ann, and Sarah are all good to go, but the 12-year-old, we're gonna wait a bit. And I just remember my mission president being like, "Well, what's the problem?" And I said, "Well, he doesn't know if he believes in God." And I remember my mission president basically was like, "You need to fix this, elder." And I'm like, what are you talking about? He doesn't believe in God. They're like, I'm not gonna, And like, I just remember that thing. It's like, because I think the Zoni, because you go through the thing where like first you call the Zoni. I'm like, yeah, we're not baptizing Billy. He doesn't believe in God. And the Zoni's like, you need to fix this, elder. I'm like, no. And then I call the mission. That's right. Oh, that's right. Because like, it wasn't even you called the president. You called the Zoni. The Zoni called the president. The president called me up. He's like, what's with the 12-year-old? I'm like, he says he doesn't believe in God. He said he doesn't know. I asked him like, do you believe in God? He's like, I'm not sure. And I'm like, well, all right, let's work on that. And, like my whole attitude is like, whatever, like I've got another 2 months here that, that everybody else gets baptized. We'll work on it, But yeah, just that thing about like with the president was like, fix it. Like, wait a second, what are we doing here? Like, is it really just get them in the water no matter what? And, because like we didn't counter too much of that. Cause like, I know, like, you talk about there's a lot more, especially in Mexico. It didn't take much convincing to get somebody in the water.
Well, and then they wouldn't be sticklers on like the question of tithing and all that sort of stuff. It's like, you can kind of try about it or something. Like maybe you said no, but like, would you try? Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and pass it for the baptism.
And you can't commit to living the word of wisdom because you like coffee. Well, we'll do the work on that.
Yeah, the interviewers would schmooze all that stuff, and I didn't even realize they were schmoozing it until like my last 6 months, and I saw some other guys schmoozing. I was like, you guys are really flubbing on that. Like I thought that was we had to. Yeah. We didn't present all sorts of people because we knew that guy said no to giving up coffee, or we didn't bring these guys because there was a smoker there still, and we said you had to quit the smoking first. And all over the place, there's like, nah, just send them in and like get them in the interview process. Say, will you work on it? Yeah, I'll work on it. Let's see here. Yeah, Steve says some of those guys would grovel submissiveness to gratify their ambition. Charles says, I promise him over it, Chris. Well, I'm not. I'm going to go pop that guy right in the kisser.
Troy, did you see the movie Train to Busan?
That's a good one.
That's such a
zombie one. Says, oh, yeah.
I'm so ragingly jealous. I'd like Korea was top of my list of desired destinations. And alas.
Steve went to Bolivia. That Bolivia would be cool. I wonder, is it cold there?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's high mountain.
Yeah, high mountain stuff, right? The Bolivia accent's weird to me. I met 1 or 2 people around. There's not a ton of Bolivian immigrants, but the few I've met, like it's an interesting accent.
Yeah, like I don't know if it's too similar because I remember like Peruvians from Lima, like they've got like a metropolitan Spanish accent, I guess. But if you're like the Peruvians from like the high plains, like Cusco, whatever, at Nazca, they talk funny. That's different. That's a very different kind of Spanish.
There's a way that the Mayans talk, and the Bolivians kind of remind me of that. Maybe it's because it's Incan or something, but they have this way of talking that maybe kind of like it sounds a little bit like Native American. Yo quiero decirte que yo soy de Oaxaca. They have that sort of thing going on. Charles says his wife went to Uruguay, which is basically the Oklahoma we're both from of South America. I heard that they always called it Uruguay the Switzerland of South America because they had a bunch of offshore banks down around there. I heard there was some wealth in Uruguay at one point or another.
Uruguay is fascinating because there's only like 3 million Uruguayans. There's not many more Uruguayans than there are Utahns, and yet
I've never met
great mysteries because the Uruguayan soccer team is one of the strongest soccer teams in the world, despite being population-wise one of the smallest countries.
They're pretty European, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Is that how the Bolivians would talk like that? Because that's I was kind of doing more of a Mayan impersonation, but the Bolivians just remind me of how the Mayans would talk that way. But let's see, Mitchell. Oh, did I miss? No. Okay, Mitchell Clark says stateside we were fed by members every night. Well, we were fed every day in Mexico too, but that was actually somewhere where we'd get some of the weirdest stuff and that we had to force down. But on my nephew's little video, I saw the missionaries going and cooking every meal, like a day in the life, and they go home to cook breakfast, they go home to cook lunch, they go home to cook dinner, and I was like,
That's
we didn't
weird.
even have a way to cook. We didn't need
Yeah.
it. Like I would go home every single night not wanting to eat ever again in my life.
In my mission, we probably had, I'd say all in all, probably like 85% of dinners were taken care of by members. But other than that, we did everything ourselves. Like
We had
breakfast and lunch, we had to do ourselves.
100%. They'd share it in the ward, so like they'd all get us like once or twice, every couple months. And then every once in a while, some lady in the ward would get paid to be our cook, and we'd go to their house every single day.
I think
And
the greatest miracle of my mission was that because we got, depending on the month, we got between like $120 and $135 a month. And in a 12-month period, right in the middle of my mission, I somehow contrived to save $1,000 for bicycle parts, just because I wanted to keep upgrading my bike. And like I have no idea how I pulled that off, because I was living on like $40 a month.
we got the equivalent of $45 a month, and it didn't go a long way if we ended up using a bunch of
Public transport.
buses, public transport. Yeah, so a lot of us would end up dipping into our own money. I've told the story before. The guy I talked to him here on the channel. He was my missionary friend, but we got to a point where they were supposed to reimburse us if we dipped way into our own money, and then they stopped reimbursing us. They just wouldn't do it. They forget, or they wouldn't do it, and it never happened. And that guy, we had this large zone meeting where like all the zones were together in Mexico City. We had a small enough area, everybody could go to the same ward house. So there's like 150 missionaries there, and he was mad about them not reimbursing his money. He didn't show up in time, and finally halfway through the zone meeting, he shows up in his P-Day clothes with his guitar and saying, "No zone leaders, no cry." No, only just walking up the aisle of the thing, and I laughed my head off so hard. Like everybody else was just astonished and quiet, and there was me over on the floor, like ah! I was just dying laughing at that thing. But he was so funny, and that's full real, man. He walked right up. Just imagine like a ward, and a guy walking up the ward of missionaries, just no zone leader, no cry. Choice served in Korea. I didn't know that. Did that come into use in the gaming world? I'm guessing it did a bunch. This was Benson's Flood the Earth with the Book of Mormon era, and I was hardcore. Placed 2 books on the plane, fly over, then went on to place 700 more in my 2 years. Wow! So you guys actually counted them and stuff.
Wow.
So one thing I noticed on my little nephew's video, what they were doing, when they were approaching the people, is they were asking everybody, want to come to church on Sunday. That was the question. Is that new, or is that something they've always done stateside? Because every single question is, want to come to church Sunday, want to come to church Sunday, want to come to church Sunday, want to come to church Sunday. And they'd say church, or to like they didn't use anything that sounded LDS. They'd say like want to come to Bible services on this. They'd say stuff like that. Yeah. And I'd never heard that before. I don't know if that's new or if that's the same. And then of course they don't call people investigators, they call people friends now. Like, this is our friend.
That's a weird one.
But then they put that in the papers too. We have a friend, this and this getting baptized this day, and friend this and this getting baptized this day.
Yeah, just completely. It's just so funny how language does that. It's like, you're doing your paperwork. We made 6 friends this week.
That's exactly what
we lost 2 friends. We lost
2 friends, and but we made 7 other friends. It sounds Facebooky, right? Like,
yeah,
they clicked like on us.
Did they do Troy? Did they do the English lessons ruse? Was that a thing in Korea?
Well,
I know
we
that's
did that.
really famous
in
Japan.
We totally did that in Mexico, but we got to a point where we actually were doing a little bit of teaching. If some people took it pretty serious.
Huh. That's another thing where it'd be like, that would be a nice diversion. It's like, well, you know what? Let's just speak English for an hour, and
but
that'll be my mission.
You always had the sense that like we were pressured to not really do it too. Like it always felt like we were not really supposed to be putting time and effort into that, and we should own. Like, it was 100% insinuated that we better be trying to push some baptism in there if we're bothering doing it at all. On my mission, we had power knocking, and that was presented my first day by that exact AP I said, who screwed his way all over Mexico. And the way he showed it is he'd go up and like do this smarmy guy thing and show like the picture of Jesus in the red robe and stuff and say, this is Jesus Christ. And the power knocking, the whole thing was like, he came down here, gave us the true scriptures. You want to get baptized? Like it was like literally like the power knocking was like we were supposed to move into asking them to get baptized at the door. And I heard that like my first meeting on my mission. And I was like, are they out of their minds? Are they crazy?
Yeah, the other thing, like people talked about that in our mission, and everybody was just like, "Oh, come on!" Like
we did it.
I mean, it was never going to work in California. Like I said, because everybody already had an opinion on Mormonism. There's no way.
It worked 0 times. It worked 0 times in Mexico. Sometimes maybe some of the people we got in the door with it worked with, but the fact of being like, yes, whoa, you know, the few times it might have worked, if I remember, it's just because then it just turned into normal discussions once we got in the door or something like that. But there was never any sort of reason why that just being normal wouldn't have just worked. On the mission,
how long until like the mission like does like baptismal font mobile, like just like remember this pool mobile from Simpsons, where you just park it in the neighborhood, knock on the neighbors, like, hey, right here, you ready? Let's go.
Yeah,
I wonder, maybe those days are coming.
Yeah, on the mission we used to plan really long travel walks, buses, just to chew more of the time. Yeah. Mine wasn't necessarily like planned like that, but there was times where I'd look and see that like I probably could have like called these guys and rearranged it to like not walk to this one, to walk to this one, to walk to this one, but I just left it like, we'll just leave that way.
It's nothing though with our mission though, is because like I mean the winters were cold, but not, I don't know. Actually, they were kind of shitty because they were almost freezing, like almost snow, but not quite. So it was just really, really cold rain. And then in the summers, 110 was normal for July and August. And so like, yeah, a lot of the year it was just awful being outside for us. So like,
Mexico was 75 year round, but we'd get some rainy seasons, but the smog was off the charts at that time. And there was at any given moment, any missionary, and we used to send pictures around to each other, any missionary could take a picture of at least 12 stray dogs just within sight. And we'd take pictures of them humping and send them around each, because we had like an intermissioning, because the dogs would hump and they'd get stuck together. So everywhere we went, there's these dogs stuck together after, with shame face. They'd have the shame face in the dogs, and we'd send around the pictures to each other of these humping stray dogs. Yeah. Troy says it was a great mission. He spent half of it in the city and half of it in the developing countryside in the island of Cove. I wouldn't know how to say that. Is that how the Koreans say it? You know a little bit of Korean.
Let's see. I can read Hangul.
We went and played poker, and Flip started talking Korean with the dealer lady one time. I'm like, when the fuck did you pick this up, Flip?
Gotcha. Korean is one of those things where it's easier to read in Korean, kind of like Russian. No, Korean. I mean, I don't know, because I'm particularly into scripts, and because I learned how to read Cyrillic in 7th grade. I took a year of Russian, and I was like, oh wow, like there's other scripts, and they're actually better than English because you can just say and pronounce things the way they're spelled. And I remember reading a long time ago that they said the Korean alphabet is like the most efficient alphabet. And a few years ago, I decided to test it to see if I could learn it. I remember like I returned missionary from Korea. I was like, isn't it hard to read? He's like, you can learn it in an afternoon. And it's true. You can absolutely learn to read Korean in a day. Because the thing with Korean that most people in the West don't understand is that they think it's logograms like Chinese because it's in little blocks like that. But it's a true alphabet. It's just instead of writing it all out in a vertical line, you write in these little blocks that go like this. But yeah, it's the most, because one thing, it's the only alphabet that's like in regular use that was invented for the purpose of the language and not, an evolved adaptation of an existing script adapted to a language. Like in the 14th century, a really progressive, forward-thinking king called Sojun the Great thought literacy was a good idea, and so he developed an alphabet for Korean. So their alphabet is awesome. Yeah.
I learned a little bit of Japanese once, and actually the pronunciation in Spanish kind of helps with Japanese pronunciation.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty phonetic. Except
Japanese has that
like
thing, like
swallowed
Korean has the same
vowel.
thing where, yeah, like because Korean and Japanese both have the thing where like you can't have a
It's
syllable.
probably Busan is probably Busan, right? Is that one of those swallowed ones?
Busan, yeah. Well, that's
It's
thing like
it's
sometimes
the
you say
letter
boo,
U.
sometimes boo.
Yeah.
Korean
It's definitely
has
after R.
Korean has 6 vowels. I think like there's 6 distinct vowels in Korean. There's what is it? Wait, yeah. E, o,
There's gotta speak as the Romans. That is true, says Mitchell Clark. Harambe Boy says, I missed you boys. We missed you too, Harambe Boy. Some of the missionaries did the come learn English rubes if they were serving near university or high school. I didn't serve in one of those areas. I bet you in your time frame over there in Korea, Troy, I bet you the Korean ladies went wild for you guys.
Also, the other thing I wonder, Troy, about your mission is how many of your companions just pissed and moaned about the food the entire time and never.
Is it bad food? No, you love Korean food. You've taken me to Korean food a bunch of times. There's so much pickling.
You would hate Korean food because its fermented sea product is ubiquitous. In fact, I just think there's a classic episode of Simpsons that reminds me of you, where they go to the seafood restaurant and even Marge is like, "Is there anything on the menu without fish in it?"
Yeah.
And the waiter's like, "No, ma'am." And it's like that's you every time you go out to eat with me and Doodle. It's like
smell it. Sometimes when you would cook fish, it would like go, oh. But the it's funny because on my mission I had to eat weird crap, and we were told that you had to eat weird crap and you couldn't turn it down. And I didn't turn down anything. I ate chicken hearts, livers, heads of cows. One of the weirdest things I ever had is they just brought out the head of a cow and plopped it on the table and gave us a carving knife and tortillas to carve the head into, the skin, the fur was still on and everything, and someone was like cut the tongue and all that sorts of stuff, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I got through that. But the one time I turned it down and just I can't do this, I can't do it, was this fish head. It was like fish heads in some soup, and you probably just would have eaten that one. Like it would probably been weird, but you probably would have eaten that one. Yeah. And I just couldn't do it. And the lady had actually like announced to us that she made a specialty just for us that day because it was the day we were leaving the area, and she wanted to make us something special. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't.
Yeah, I don't love fish head, but like in a pinch I'd eat it. But
but I bet you that happened all the time in Korea and Japan. What weird stuff did you eat, Troy? You had to eat some weird stuff there. Although I bet you Korea's Americanized out a whole ton
by now. Yeah, well, I mean, because like just in the last 30 years, fried chicken wings have become like because Korean chicken wings have taken over the world. You know, and
I bet you Mexico City's Americaned out a ton just from when I've been there.
Where did I see it? I don't even remember where it was now, but it's so like just the way the world works is so hilarious to me because there's a famous dish in Korea that was invented within the last 50 years that's called army stew, and it's like a sort of like it's based on like a traditional Korean stew, but instead of traditional Korean ingredients, it's all canned shit that the American military, food aid. So it's like Spam and ramen and smoked sausages, like, just all the little doodads that the American army fed the Koreans with after the Korean War. So like there's that, like, all right. So that like, in like most Korean restaurants, that's the thing on the menu now is army stew, which is, like has all this American ingredients in it. And the other day, I don't even know where it was. I think it was Facebook or something. There's like an ad or video or something for like a Singaporean restaurant that had Korean army stew pizza. I'm just thinking like, well, there we go. Like there's not a corner of the world left that hasn't been touched by globalism because you can go to Singapore and get a pizza in the style of a Korean dish based on American food. Like, well, there you go.
Yeah. It's sad, man. It's sad. The global homo is sad.
Some of them never adapted and lived off of choco pies and ramen. Yeah, that's a hard life. Because that, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I was kind of fortunate in that I was raised by, like, because, you know, my dad is a freak of nature because he was just a white bread Mormon Utah guy, but he just has the bug in him to try new things. And I'll never forget the day when I was 12 years old. My dad, like, he'd helped like on a Saturday, he used to help a family friend make money as a house mover. And my dad came home with a jar of homemade kimchi. And I remember eating that. And it was like immediately it was the spiciest thing I'd ever eaten in my life. And I became entirely entranced by kimchi from that moment. It was so unlike anything else I'd ever had before. And like, and then for a couple of years, I kept begging my dad, let's go to a Korean restaurant. Let's go to a Korean restaurant. And then we finally did. And it was everything I'd hoped for and more. But
Flip's dragged me to Korean restaurants probably 3 or 4 times. I actually find stuff I like there. But you do get a sense that there's a lot of pickled fishy stuff.
Yeah, like for you, like going to the Korean barbecues where you can, you know.
Oh, yeah, those are good.
Yeah, you like those because you can just get a piece of meat and grill it, and that's perfect for you. But because, you know, like I like all the weird stuff with the fermented fish product in it.
But I tried some of those pickled things too. Those are pretty good. It's not the worst, you know. But there has been some times where I sit back and think and kind of go, yeah, that whole experience by the end of it was ultimately fishy. And yeah, that's not my favorite.
When that dim sum with doodles.
Yeah, that was Chinese, but that one felt that one.
They were like,
on
yeah,
fishy
like
side too.
Because like, you know, even the beef dumplings were fishy. You know?
Yeah. So you want to keep pounding away at ripping apart this terrible church, or you want to see? Let's look at Zelfs on the shelves. Zelfs on the shelves. I only have a couple of funny things with this one, but
what about real quick with Troy Japchae? Because like of all the,
I'm gonna run to the restroom while you keep talking about it. So.
But because it seems like Japchae seems like something that any American should love, you know, because like I don't know, I mean it's sweet, sticky, savory noodles, and I have met a couple people who said they don't like it, but they're just people who don't like anything. But like, because, you know, that was my thing whenever I'd go to a Korean restaurant with, you know, with the Americans who are like, I don't want to try weird things. Like, well, get japchae. You'll like japchae. And it seems like, yeah, like it seems like even an American who likes choco pies and ramen should be able to adapt to something like japchae, but maybe not. Now I want japchae. Tasty glass noodles and sticky sweet sauce. Onions and carrots. Yeah, I'm in Salt Lake City. The good Korean restaurant closed down though recently. Korean restaurants are kind of weird in this town. Like they kind of come and go. They're constantly changing ownership. But I'm sure there's at least one good one. There's a couple of good Korean barbecue places, but I haven't been to just a proper restaurant in a while. I remember the very first time I went to the Korean restaurant, I ordered the first thing that I saw with kimchi in the name. It was kimchi bokkeumbap. And I loved it so much. But also that's when I discovered banchan. You know, because that's the other thing with Korean food that's so good is that, like, if you ever go out to a Korean dinner, it's kind of a unique experience because, like, I mean, you can go alone and order entrees, but that's the other thing that drives me nuts about my American friends is, like, you know, the first hurdle is talking them into, like, guys, try something new. First thing, like, let's not do fucking Applebee's again. Let's try something new. Like, hey, guys, let's try Korean. And, like, first you have to fight with them for that. Then the second thing is, like, you know, first off, just try something new. Okay. How about Korean? And they're like, well, I don't know. Is that like Chinese or Japanese? I'm like, no, it's Korean. It's completely its own thing. They're like, okay. And then the third hurdle, which I could never get over, is I try to, like, tell them ahead of time. It's like, okay, Korean dining is done best family style. The American thing is everybody goes and orders their own thing and you have your own thing, and that's the American. But you're doing it wrong if you go to a Korean restaurant and do it that way. And I could never, like, because I'd always tried to get, like, my American friends, like, because ideally you should have, like, at least 8 people when you go to a Korean restaurant. Because for one thing, a lot of the restaurants will give you more or less banchan, little side dishes, depending on how big your crowd is. You know, but I was always like, guys, like, the trick is 8 of us go, we order 4 big dishes, and it's all family style, but Americans just can't fucking do it. They're like, no, I want my own little plate. I need my thing. Leave me alone. Go away. You know, and then I went with somebody who like didn't want to come with us. It was a friend of a friend. and she ordered a dolsat bibimbap, which is like called Korean chop suey, and like, you know,
I've had
she's
that
like
one.
looking at it and she's picking at it. She's like, she doesn't know what to do with it, and the Korean lady came over and was like, helpfully, was like, oh, let me show you how to do this. You know, like she didn't speak any English, but like she grabs a bowl and like she grabs the chopsticks and she mixes it all up. Because that's what you're supposed to do. Like the dolsat bibimbap, it all comes like nicely arranged, but the whole point of it is you just mix it all up, throw a bunch of sauce on it. And like this lady, my friend, just gets this horrified look on her face. And once the lady leaves, she goes like, I hate mixed food. I'll never invite you out to something that is an Applebee's again, so you can have your fucking non-mixed
If Flip's
food.
taking me out to the thing, I just go like, oh, I just gotta go for the ride, man, and try the thing. But some of it's been awesome. Like I love the Afghani stuff, and I love the.
Oh yeah,
I like the Korean stuff each time too.
There is a great Afghani restaurant in this town, the Afghan Kitchen. They do excellent work.
Flip Troy says that maybe you already read these. I was off the screen, but you did. He says if you live in the Salt Lake area, I'd love to go out to Korean food with you when I'm up sometime to visit my son, who also worked on Hogwarts Legacy. Did he keep his job after you moved on? That'd be sweet if you guys were able to catch up and eat weird fishy pickle stuff.
Omok is one of my favorite banchans. Fish cake. That's one of those things like you just say the word to an American and they just go, ooh.
Yeah.
Anyway, sex toys and gift cards to bless it. Yeehaw! Hope that gets approved.
Tanner, is that a banana in your pocket? Or are you just excited about... Wait, never mind. We already introduced the brand deal. What's the new punchline?
Tanner, is that a banana in your pocket or are you just excited about the brand deal?
Both. As a demisexual, the demi wand has just got me all kinds of excited these days.
You're not a demisexual.
I'm only attracted to demigods, and that is true.
The cases having chargers in them. Genius.
Man, they're selling sex toys now.
That is so cringe. That really is just like, oh God. I mean, but like, because are they a 501c3?
I don't think they can be and try to sell those. I don't know if they ever.
Like, I wonder, how does that work?
I don't think they ever did. Maybe they did or didn't, but they could use the religious thing and she could use the coach thing, but I don't know if they did or didn't.
That's just so grody. And she's wearing a Taylor Swift shirt.
Yeah, they're big Swifties.
They really are they're a meme. They're an unself-aware meme of modern day dipshittery.
So this was about purity culture. It's an hour. I bet you could write the hour for them.
Purity is dehumanizing delusional concept. All right, good luck with that.
Let's see them hit one out of the park right here though.
Ever talking about how the left wants to make it so that kids can consent. And I'm like, that's never been a part of any kind of definition of consent I've ever heard. It's like the exact opposite.
You don't know.
I can send you some links there, Sam. Going back to the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and right now where they are doing exactly that.
Yeah.
It is a part of the program.
One of the things of when we did that with when we went over some of those things with Jonathan Streeter on the new discourses stuff is we covered the Foucault and the letter and the affidavit of all the different people, lefties, who signed on the concept of abolishing the concept of underage consent.
Yeah.
And that's a very famous document that almost kind of flies around in circles so much that makes me wonder, like, are you even online? Like, how do you not know about this stuff?
Yeah.
Especially if, like, you claim you're lefty bona fides. But at this point, I thought everybody's heard the Foucault thing fly around because it wasn't just Foucault; it was everybody at the time. It was
even if you don't go like down the postmodernist, the whole queer theory thing. Like the NAMBLA episode of South Park is 20 years old now.
Mm-hmm.
Like. And those are NAMBLA was a real organization advocating for exactly that. And you'll never guess what scholarly tradition they drew their rhetoric from. It was queer theory.
Yeah. I think Jonathan clipped that out. I couldn't find the exact thing, but Jonathan clipped out just covering that affidavit to lower or abolish the concept of underage sexual consent. And 100% Foucault said this, and it was put in the thing that he said that he felt children, all sorts of different children, could consent from any age. They could, and Foucault is the king champion of this stuff. Like he's considered the godfather of queer theory.
Troy, when you took girls on dates to Korea House, how many second dates did you get, and how many of them were like, nope, I'm not dating a guy who eats this shit?
Yeah,
I just kind of wonder, because also wonder, because I mean, taking a female out to eat on a date is already kind of dodgy, because they want, they do the salad picking at things thing, and it's like, because Korean food, that's not how you do that. That's one thing I really appreciate about Korean cultures. I mean, because every culture has like a food culture, but the Koreans has kind of a special food culture. Like one of my favorite things, I forget what it's called, but in Korea, when you turn a year old, that's a really big deal. They've got a special name for it. And one of the things that happens when you're a year old is you are given your first spoon and you eat your first rice. And I think that's what it's called. I think it's called first rice, is like the name of this event that you throw for your baby. And it's all part of like you're growing up and you're moving off of breast milk and you're moving on to solid food. And in Korea, that means you're eating rice. So you're going to need a spoon. So everybody gets their first spoon when you're 1 year old and you eat your first rice. And that's the big moment. They take pictures of it and everybody, and whole family, all that stuff, just because like that's how central food is.
So Troy, my niece, you probably hear this a lot in the world nowadays, but my little niece is South Korea crazy. And she's South Korea crazy because of what's that boy band, BTK or something like that?
The Born to Kill?
Yeah, I guess it sounds like the BTK killer. They bind.
Oh yeah, the BTS. No, that's the thing that drives me nuts, because I saw BTS, because they started becoming famous. And the first time I saw in the news where it's like, oh, BTS, I'm like, Built to Spill?
Yeah,
is on the international. I stupid me. I thought you were talking about the 90s guitar band from Boise. Of course, it's a Korean boy band.
My little niece is crazy enough about them that she is trying to save up money to take a trip to South Korea.
Can I go with?
She's just like 13, 14,
There is a long correlation between anarchism and pedophilia and support for pedophilia. Wait. That's a beautiful line. Thank you so much for asking. How about something relevant? I've been talking about rape culture all day, and pedophilia and the support of pedophilia is not rape culture. Actually, it seems you're acting like this is a spurious connection. So we're gonna play Jeopardy. We're gonna play queer theory. We're gonna play queer theory, pedophilia, Jeopardy. Okay, answer. Commonly called the godfather of queer theory. Who is Foucault? Okay, 100 points. Foucault. Another way to ask this is who argued? No, I guess the answer would be argued for the eradication of age of consent laws as in down to infants.
Who is Foucault?
Nobody ever said. I need Jared to do the impersonation. Nobody ever said this in the history of never. Foucault is one of the things that Streeter wanted to point out with Foucault, as he was pointing to us ex-Mormons who always want to dump truths on the Mormons of stuff their prophets actually said back in the day. Is Streeter wanted to point and say, hey, your queer theory or leftist prophets, because they really do hold that level of prophet and seer in the lefty world. Foucault is the most cited professor in all of academia.
Yeah. Another example of the ones that they never want to deal with is Margaret Sanger.
Oh,
the grandmother of Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
Like she wanted abortion specifically so that black women would stop having so many babies.
There's so many.
That was her mission. That was her goal.
There's so many old school Malthusians who actually openly advocated for the death penalty, and we're complete eugenicists.
Okay, Next one.
What is that in Spanish? Eugenesistes?
The author of the founding document of queer theory. Who is Gail Rubin? What percentage? Oh no, the answer is 50%. Question is.
The amount in that article that was a defense of pedophilia, specifically quote boy lovers, the negative voice.
Oh.
Who is this guy?
And since you're not believing me, quote, this is in the founding document
Derek Vince,
communists and homosexuals.
who is a gay, queer, or humanities professor. But once again, no, he's probably some alt-righter.
Boy lovers are so stigmatized that it is difficult to find defenders of their civil liberties, let alone for their erotic orientation. That's in the founding document of queer theory. I'm sorry, I'm using facts. 1,000 apologies. One must never let facts in the way. Oh, she also compared, by the way, she compared pedophilia to a preference for spicy food. The thing is, I've never heard of anyone who has to have years of therapy because they ate hot and sour soup. Okay, so up to 200. Now it is.
I have that Korean food. Flip made me go to
the fishy beef dumpling at the Chinese place. You're still angry.
Fishy dumpling. I thought was going to be savory in a different way.
Theory for 300. That would be author of Macho Sluts. Author of Macho Sluts and Public Sex. Pat Califia.
The thing is, too, is like for every big name in the thing, there's 1,000 small names who said just as dipshitty stuff. More than 1,000.
No, because here's the other thing about this, where it's like with these people that you can never get them to talk to you long enough. But I get in these fights with my sisters about feminism, all this stuff, where just for example, if you say feminism hates men, and they go, "Oh, you shut up. You're so full of shit. You Fox News, right wing. You don't know what you're talking about. You didn't go to school." So I send them a link to that Washington Post opinion piece written by the head of a gender studies department at a major public American university titled "Why Can't We Hate Men?" And then they just shut down. And because my question to them is okay, let's say that this woman doesn't represent feminism when she writes a piece and the Washington Post publishes it saying, "Why can't we hate men?" And the whole thing is an argument for hating men. And it would be one thing if there was any segment, if the gender studies head at a different public university published a paper saying no, this lady's wrong and this is why. Or if the next week Washington Post had an opinion from a different gender study professor that said, no, it's not okay. But no, the fact is there's crickets. Nobody in the feminist world came out and said, of course feminism isn't about hating men. No, they were fucking silent.
The thing is you 100% get this concept too when it comes to Russell M. Nelson. That Russell M. Nelson says, beware of counsel. You could maybe say, oh, that's not necessarily what he meant, but he said the words, beware of counsel from people who aren't members. And then you guys extrapolate from that every possible bad situation that could come out of that. Well, the same thing happens when the top queer theorists and the top gender theorists say crap like that. Every single possible extrapolation and nutbag comes out of the woodwork from that. So if you go downstream from that person, it's the same with Ibram X. Kendi and his crap school that was completely defunct, which John McWhorter and Glenn Lowry had a hilarious podcast on that this week where they
do that one, yeah. Because I didn't listen to them. I listened to somebody else talk about how they blew through $54 million in 3 years and produced nothing.
Yeah, but the rhetoric that he said, it trickles down to dipshits who go and push this in and make, I don't know, DEI trainings for companies and stuff like that. And the original guys aren't that careful, but it gets less careful as it goes down. The stuff gets more and more outrageously hyperbolic as it goes down, or insane. And one of the things that I got to do when I was in college and stuff like that, when James Lindsay read all this stuff and put it together in the book, the New Discourses book, I forget the exact name of the book, but the book about all the critical theories, cynical theories, that's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
He got to just go read the big main names. When I was in school, I read everybody who wrote quoting Foucault, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of papers quoting Foucault, not Foucault myself until I got into Foucault myself later, because I've read a ton of Foucault. But I read the quoters of Foucault, and there's a billion of them downstream, and they, just like you guys extrapolated that Russell Nelson saying the kingdom that you will want to go to means you got no balls. That same stuff happened downstream from Foucault, who said, yes, you should be able to have pedophilic relationships down to babies.
Okay, let's talk about
Look just in this room and the people flipping out about him.
Yeah.
You're a
Okay,
trans.
here's something from one of Pat Philippia's books.
Which Streeter got the same thing when he talked about, because there's a signed affidavit, not just by Foucault. All your favorite postmodernists on there, Leotard, and then just some of the existentialists too. What's his name? Both the feminist lady, Simone de Beauvoir, and her boyfriend, her boy toy, the existentialist philosopher.
I don't know.
Starts
I think that just
the
makes
guy
me
with the
so
cross-eyed
crazy
stuff.
about
I know.
this, because like, I mean, I talked to my brother, you know, and I'll say things like, you know, well, you know, queer theory, and my brother acts like, what are you talking about? I've been in university. I've never seen any of this. And I'm like, I don't believe that you're retarded. I mean, I know that you're not retarded. I don't believe that you have somehow gone to 10 years of college spread out over the last 30 years and have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, this is like this. I'm guessing this is not like a grad level class. And these students that you hear shouting out, these ideas didn't pop into their skulls in this moment. They came from somewhere, you know? But it just, the gaslighting that I get from the people on the left about this one, you know, that's things I'm like, I just bring up like, well, queer theory. And they're like, Fox News, conspiracy. No, I'm like, no, I'm talking about queer theory. Like, there are professionals who have queer theorists in their fucking job titles. They write books. They're on TV. They're on NPR. They write opinion pieces that the Washington Post publishes. And these people look me in the face and like, what are you talking about? I've never heard of queerness. Like, oh, fuck you. I really wonder, like, are they just lying? Or is it like just that level of self-delusion where in their minds they're telling the truth? They're just so up the ass of the cult of queer theory that, you know, they don't know what they're saying. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Troy says, like, talking about taking women on dates to Korean restaurants. Because I was just thinking, it's like, you know, taking an American to a Korean, that's a trip. But like, so what if your first date is with a Korean and you want to mess with her head? You like take her out to a British meal. It's like, it's called Yorkshire pudding. It's bread. It's bread with onion gravy. It's 2 whole flavors. And for them, they're just like, what is this? What kind of nightmare is this? There's only 2 flavors.
I'm trying to find Jonathan's coverage of the affidavit of that
really
they all
interesting.
signed famously.
It's really interesting that when I actually start talking about the relationship between queer theory and anarchism and pedophilia, that it becomes that they really want to shut me up now.
You know, I remind, like,
okay,
this guy's trying to go through.
So
Like,
here's
at
my
work,
clip,
I got in an argument with a Marxist because we were talking about the homeless problem, you know, and like, he's a Marxist, and I just kind of said, you know, like, you know, it's interesting to note that you need 2 things. A society must have 2 things in order to have a homelessness problem. It has to have a lot of money and a lot of freedom. And he just scoffed at me like I spoke total nonsense. You know, it's like, no, buddy, like, think about it. Like, there are no homeless people in the poorest places in Africa because you just simply die. And there's no homeless people in the Soviet Union because they were rounded up and killed. The only way you can have a huge homeless population is economic wealth, a lot of wealth, and a lot of freedom. But just like this, with the people in this crowd, they act like you're a maniac for saying basically true things. And yeah, this just reminded me of that, the way this guy's getting heckled.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm gonna find Streeter did a whole podcast. I'm trying to find it on just that petition. Reads the actual petition out.
Oh, wait. Just a second. I was accused of homophobia because I'm against pedophilia. Who is it who actually makes the connections between that?
Dude, I like this guy. I've never seen him before. Why can't he have a TV show?
Okay, here's something by Pat Califia. Pat Califia has written, any child old enough to decide whether or not she or he wants to eat spinach, play with trucks, or wear shoes is old enough to decide whether or not she wants to run around naked in the sun, masturbate, sit in someone's lap, or engage in sexual activity, by which she does not mean play doctor, she means with adults. She's very clear about that because she also says that pedophiles should be more and not less invested in children's lives. Okay, so we're at 300. 400 is the most famous queer theorist of the day. Answer. No, it is not Judith Butler. Who is Judith Butler? Okay, Judith Butler is the most famous queer theorist of the day.
See you, all of you supporters here, who do not care about trans people's lives. Every supporter here.
Okay. Here's a great quote from Judith Butler. Okay, so Judith Butler wrote, so I keep adding this qualification. When incest is a violation, suggesting I think there may be occasions in which it's not. Why would I talk that way? Well, I do think that there are probably forms of incest that are not necessarily traumatic, and which gain their traumatic character by virtue of the conscience of social standing that they produce. Yeah, that's Judith Butler. That's one of the queer heroes. Okay, now we have for 500 we have the last one in the queer theory of pedophilia. The answer is queer theorist who has spoken out strongly against pedophilia. Who is no one? Not a single one. Because the entire thing is based on transgressing.
Yeah, no, there you go. He said it.
Yeah.
Like, there's nobody. Because like this is like, where's the feminist that speaks out against misandry?
Yeah.
There is no one. They don't exist because it's a contradiction. You know, and like I've brought it up before, and I mean it's a Godwin's law thing, but whatever. Godwin's law, like, I mean, it's a valid analogy to draw, because what I've brought up before, it's like, you know, if it's not, but if the Nazi conspiracy theory is true, then everything they do is justified. What made the Nazis evil was that their conspiracy theory was not true. If the feminist conspiracy theory that they call patriarchy, which is perfectly analogous to the Nazi idea of Zionist, if it's true, then the feminists are totally justified. But it's not true. So that means they're doing evil. It's that simple. You know? Like, you know, I've said before, like, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but like, fill in the blanks. Am I a Nazi talking about Jews or a feminist talking about men? Blanks are on Hollywood. All of the financial institutions are run by blanks. In fact, all of the wars in history are because of blanks. Like, which am I? Am I a feminist or a Nazi? The answer is it doesn't matter. It all fits because that's the conspiracy theory to those things. Now, they're not true. It's not true that blanks run Hollywood. Neither Jews nor men. It's not true that blanks are responsible for all wars. Neither Jews nor men, you know. It's an evil conspiracy theory. But the fact is that enough people believe it and take it seriously. And then, you know, you have entire university, not even departments. There's an entire, like, the humanities is a feminist endeavor at this point. And I know this because, like, I don't, like, just from my immediate family, 2 sisters and a cousin. One got a film degree, one got a degree in journalism, and one got a public health degree. And yet they have all told me to my face, I have a degree in feminism. Like, they made that slip. I didn't accuse them of it. They made that slip. They copped to the fact that my film degree was effectively a degree in feminism. My journalism degree was effectively a degree in feminism. My public health degree was effectively a degree in feminism.
Yeah. 100%. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Troy says, I've heard both Christina Hoff Sommers and Camille Paglia speak out against misandry.
Well, yeah, but no, but I don't know if you heard, but they're alt-right rape apologists. Like they're only feminists in that they continue to claim that they're feminists. You know, because that thing is like, I mean, I don't know, because like I appreciate the Christina Hoff Sommers types, you know, who say like, no, I'm holding on to the feminism of the 1960s, which was feminism like the boys in college don't have to be in their dorms by 10, so why should the woman? Okay, that is a form of feminist equality that I am 100% behind. Because the whole argument there was because, like, you know, the argument was like, hey, it's dangerous out there, ladies. It's dangerous at night. For one thing, there are rapists. And rapists like to work at night. So for your safety, we're telling you to stay in at 10. And the feminists at the time, to their credit, God bless them, I'm on their side. They said, hey, we want to have the right to take the same risks that the men do. Because if it's dangerous for men after 10, you know, it's not like men are totally safe after 10. The risk of violence goes up for men after dark too. But that's the equality they fought for. It's like, well, we shouldn't be held to a different standard than men. Okay, fast forward, like, because that's things like that feminism is dead as far as the universities are concerned. Like that's not even on their radar shit like that. The feminism of today is totally divorced from the idea that, well, women should be allowed to take risks like men. Okay. All right, fine, you know. But that's not what they're doing now. You know, now it's why can't we hate men? Now it's, you know, filling little girls with the lie that women make less money for the same work and then giving those women powerful positions in HR departments.
Yeah, I can't find the I know Jonathan did like a whole video reading that petition. I can't find it. I was just gonna share it in the streams. Maybe I'll get him to link it up tomorrow.
Well,
But
that guy, what's his name? Derek Jensen.
mhm.
That's
That's
great.
become a famous clip of that guy doing that Jeopardy thing right there. But there's more quotes. You can go forever on the
Yeah.
the
Yeah, no,
concept.
that.
Go ahead.
Well, that's things, you know, like you talked about, because like, I mean, and I was there for a lot of it because, you know, you said for so long you have been banging your head against the wall, just trying to convince people like, don't take my word for it. Just go read. Just go read what they're saying.
Yeah, it's
For
the
yourself,
same.
right?
It's the same thing that they go, you know, pretending that they're doing to other religions. Like, I'm going to reveal to you like what your prophets and what your people said to you. And like, well, did you know in DNC 132 they said this? That's just been it all along. Is saying like these things are actually said by your crazy people that are your left side. And the same thing happens with like, you know, the power elite, the WF people. Is like, you guys have these conspiracy theories and all that sorts of stuff. And you go, did you read the stuff they say?
Yeah.
They said it, you know?
Because 10, 12 years ago, you were telling me this stuff. And I was like, you know, in my head, I did like the Joe Rogan thing where like your classical liberal mind tries to reinterpret it to rescue it. And I was, you know, because I was kind of like, you know, I don't get this. What's he talking about? And then like, but there's a whole other layer, like when I talk to my siblings about this stuff, where it's like, because like I didn't get that far in college, so I didn't actually read Judith Butler for myself. And I remember you talking about Judith Butler, and I'm like, wait, like they don't really believe this stuff, right? It's just an idea, you know. Found out like, no, it's Judith Butler is treated like scripture. But then fast forward to like with my siblings, where it's not even a matter of just go read it for yourself. Now it's a matter of fucking acknowledge that you read it. Like, I know you read it.
There's endless stuff about like this. Companies, you know, NPR, December 24th, 2019. Companies face an uphill battle trying to get Americans to eat bugs. NPR, July 19th, 2023. This right-wing conspiracy theory about eating bugs is about as racist as you think. And we've watched that happen just again and again and again and again.
Absolutely. Yeah. So many times now.
This is a channel. I'll go to I'm not gonna watch them, but there's this channel here. It's called Everybody Shook. And what this guy does, he's even kind of like a slight lefty leaning dude. But this whole entire channel is dedicated to the actual words of Malthusians. So it's a little bit like that guy exposing like the pedophilia of the people in the queer theory world. But this guy here polls from like actual going back 100 years, because a lot of people don't realize like George Bernard Shaw and H.G. Wells were complete Malthusians, and Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley's brother, who people don't realize that when Aldous Huxley wrote A Brave New World, he was actually polling from stuff that he knew his brother, who actually worked with Oppenheimer and all those different people, actually talked about, like their belief of what they wanted to try to do for the future. He wasn't imagining something up out of the blue. He was passing along some of like the stuff that they really thought that they were going to do. And this channel, Everybody Shook, it's the same thing as that guy. Is he just pulls like a bunch of things that were said by people like Blavatsky, or like you said, Margaret Sanger, or tons of different people through history who've said atrociously murderous things about people, and they go, "What's all these conspiracy theories? Genesis, they've all said it multiple times. They even put out, like, just like Klaus Schwab put out his Great Reset book, and then people said the Great Reset, the conspiracy theory. He put out a book about it. It's called The Great Reset. His book is called that.
Yeah, and he lays out a plan, his vision for the future of the world economy.
And the thing is, too, is like, I agree with you that it's nuts, and they're nuts, and I agree with you that they're not going to pull it off, but I don't agree with you that they're not going to try to pull parts of it off.
Yeah.
But they're going to try. They're going to try.
No, that's, I mean, like I brought it up a few times, like arguing with people, you know, just like I bring up Marxism and they just scoff. And I kind of say the same thing every time. It's like the 20th century happened. Like, that's especially with my brother. Like with my brother, it's particularly terrifying to me because my brother is a historian. Like, he's always been into it. He's always read a lot, you know, and to see him now basically just lying to my face about what he knows about this stuff, you know. And
But it's the same thing like it's talking about high demand religion stuff. It's like, I know there's the people who don't know that the stuff's there, and then there's the people who are, we're going to deny that it's there until we can no longer deny it, and then say, but it's good. You know?
Yeah, because I mean, like one of my like little tests with Marxists is, you know, I asked them, what does the name Trofim Lysenko mean anything to you? And most of them genuinely haven't heard of him. And that's one level of religious devotion. Then there's the ones who know who that is, and then they run cover, you know, they pretend like they don't, or they pretend like it's what I know about Trofim Lysenko isn't correct or whatever.
It's exactly like talking. It's exactly like when you're trying to pin people against like any sort of apologist. One of the reasons I am more charitable to Mormons nowadays is like a lot of those different things, they have nowhere to run on them anymore, and now they're just like full admitting them. Like Jacob Hansen admits most things that old apologists wouldn't admit, you know. And he says, well, we're dealing with it now that stuff's all just out in the open. But part of this world of, I don't know, whatever you call it, the lefty neoliberal. Mencius Mobley calls it the cathedral, the whole entire thing, whatever that whole leftist academia media swamp that we have going on right now. There's still a lot of it's been exposed. A ton of it's been fully exposed. Some of it is, the people talking against it sometimes go over the top at describing some stuff, but that's really more often than not, it's there's actually something behind it. Like so many times people saw that the thing Alex Jones was talking about was actually real, and then that serves to them to say, well, Alex Jones said it forever. And
I don't know, my favorite example of that though is because, like, you know, the most famous Alex Jones thing was like, I don't want them putting chemicals in the water that make the frogs gay, and everybody laugh, and then you dig into it and it's actually a totally genuine and valid environmental concern about how chemical companies releasing products into the ecosystem is messing with the biology of wildlife. And like, well, because, like, you know, that's one of those things where it's like, I remember when you guys were worried about the environment and companies dumping chemicals, but if Alex Jones does it, well, it's just a joke, point and laugh, you know. It's so shameless.
There's some stuff with that, like you kind of wonder, like, is that part of their limited hangout concept? You know, the limited hangout where they kind of let something out, but if we let it come out of the mouth of that guy, we help make it questionable. or something like that. But not that I think that he's like that. It's just I don't know. I don't know what I think about that.
Like Alex Jones is one of those guys who every word I've ever heard of Alex Jones speaking was in the context of a critic of Alex Jones playing Alex Jones speaking.
Yeah.
Like I've never actually listened to Alex Jones. Everything I know about him is that and clips of Joe Rogan. I haven't even watched the interviews with Joe Rogan.
So this whole podcast right here, I won't listen to a ton of it, but it's a new P hacker. Yeah,
Dude,
from Aiden Paladin.
I swear that YouTube is throttling Aiden Paladin, because I used to watch Aiden Paladin videos and I have not been
She's very thoroughly
in a year.
Yeah, she's a very thorough researching social scientist who reports on it really well. And this is a new one where this criminologist
shows her work,
who made a bunch of the reports, a bunch of the social science concepts behind criminology and the belief that cops only attack and they're singling out of black people and this racism stuff. A ton of his stuff came out to be completely faked, and it all got exposed. And then, of course, he called people racism for exposing him. Very good one on that. But there's more of just, the BS Me Too thing. We had the guy who got false claimed, and none of that doesn't say that, like, well, the Tim Ballard thing comes up. That's not true. No, it looks like that's true. You see how it's easy to just say stuff's true? Like, you don't got to pick teams. Like, it looks like that was true. And
like one of my favorite, like, what's so often that's so crazy about it is that, like, their own data betrays that they're wrong about it. Like, one of the most classic examples, and it's one that I've heard since I was a kid, which is like, statistically, black people are way more likely to be pulled over than white people. And you're like, the first time you hear that, you're like, wow, that sounds like a possible racism. And what's funny is, like, the exact same data that they're pulling from also shows that that's true whether it's daytime or nighttime. And so, like, well, wait, if it's true at nighttime, then we know it's not about the race. Right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, that wasn't like a data point that came out later.
You want to know one data point?
Study. It was
you want to know one data point that's real is that death by car wrecks have shot way up since George Floyd. Why is that? Probably because they're not getting pulled over and asked to slow down as often. And there's a huge spike. You can look it up yourself.
In Utah, like, I mean, they talk about, like, during,
like, it's for their own safety they get pulled over, just like COVID all of
years, us. Like, KSL's had reports on it, is that there has been a bizarre and inexplicable uptick in wrong way driving on the interstate.
Huh.
Like, KSL did a report on it in the last few months, because then, I just read the paper every day, and, like, especially during COVID, vehicle pedestrian accidents went up way up during COVID.
So
and I think you're right. It's just because the cops weren't pulling people over.
They're not pulling them over, and they're afraid to do it, and they're afraid to have a scene or get filmed or something like that. This is some medical lysinkoism going on here. Troy said that in his first video about Anita Sarkeesian, he called her a lysinkoist. How would you say that the proper way? Lysinkoist? Lysinkoist. Conventional medical documentation and recommendation for anti-racist changes in approach. And even though Kendi's come out as a complete fraud, all of this stuff is in the policies and institutions everywhere. Example of conventional documentation: chief symptoms, chest pain. We'll go down here. Current charting convention: document racial group uncritically as a matter of routine practice, specifically in the identifying information, chief symptom, or history or present illness section without reflection on its relevance to the case. Recommended change: when reading a patient's chart, maintain a questioning attitude regarding the relevance of the patient's race if it is identified. Example: the clinician who sees Rashida's face mentioned in the chart then pauses for critical self-reflection to examine potential biases in the diagnosis, treatment of both. The clinical team discusses de-biasing strategies on a routine basis.
This is doubly annoying because, the only area of human life where I think racism might have legitimate utility is emergency room medicine and medicine generally. Because, like, there are a few things that, like, certain haplogroups or whatever they're called Like there are some statistical medical differences that could matter in a clinical setting, because that's why, because I like to say race is biologically meaningless. But I think the only carve out where there might be something is in medicine. And even in medicine, they're fucking with this, because I remember 20 years ago, I was in a doctor's office and I saw they had a sign on the wall that said that, if you are Polynesian, you're 20 times more likely to develop diabetes, something like that. I'm making that number
The
up.
thing is
But they had
even
that
in the
thing up.
colorblind era, nobody was doing that. Like everybody knew something what are some of those diseases that are higher and more possible? in
Africans
Black
had Black Africans are more likely to have sickle cell anemia,
Yeah,
right?
and there was nobody who wasn't aware of that, and if they saw symptoms of sickle cell anemia, didn't say, "Hey, we got a likelihood of that," because that's a tendency. Like even the colorblind world didn't discount that because
Yeah.
the doctors weren't idiots.
Yeah.
Look at this one down here, and this is why they censored
Hughes,
Coleman
yeah.
Hughes off of TED, because he said, he's advocating for a colorblind world. And James Lindsay has a long podcast on you guys know we're not saying colorblind like that,
Yeah.
I don't see your color at all. Embrace a colorblind or post-racial ideology that ignores the impact of race and racism. The new recommended change: elicit and document patients' lived experiences of racial discrimination and other racism-related risk factors. When Rashida discloses experiences of discrimination, her care team acknowledges past and current medical racism. They recognize that Rashida is at risk for receiving inferior care and for worse than average clinical outcomes. They ensure that her pain is validated and will be comprehensively assessed.
What they don't mention is that Rashida was born in Westchester, New York. Her dad is a chemist. Her mom is a lawyer. She went to Yale. She makes $180,000 a year in her as the head of a nonprofit. None of that counts though. Rashida's Black. That's the thing that matters.
So this lady right here, she went on Radical Center. Where did it go? And she talked about all this crap pushing into ER stuff. She works with a FAIR. It's funny how the Foundation Against Something Racism sounds like the LDS apologist website.
Oh, yeah.
But she works with FAIR, the anti-racism one. But she talks about the complete cluster all of this race stuff is causing in ERs, and how it ultimately helps nothing, takes money away from the institution, slows down all processes, and makes it so they can't hire as easily just perfectly competent doctors in areas that they're needed. That's what this whole episode covers right here. Ideology in medicine, material solutions to spiritual problems. She also has on the FAIR website. It's stupid, and we knew it's stupid, and we knew all that sort of stuff is going to be like the Cincoism. It's going to kill people. It's going to slow down processes. It's going to remove money from people who actually do help people who need, medical help.
What if the $50 million they gave to Ibram Kendi just went to cancer research?
Yeah, $30 million. All it went was down the tube, man. That if you haven't listened to Glenn Lowry and McWhorter talk about that one yet, because they kind of get on each other a little bit. They get on each other a little bit because Glenn Lowry wants to bark at all the people who gave him a chance instead of at him, and Glenn Lowry says, "No, let's bark at him too." And no, bark at the people who gave him. No, bark at him. No, bark at the people who gave him. And they kind of get in a fight about who's more at fault for letting that idiot in.
Yeah, no, it's kind of one of those. It reminds me of Dehlin and Jen Camp. Who's the bigger retard there, Jen Camp or Dehlin for hiring Jen Camp? Because there's that kind of thing where it's like, I could have told you don't give Ibram Kendi money. I don't have any specialization, but if they called me up for advice, should we give $50 million to Ibram Kendi? I'd be like, no. Literally anything you spend that on would be more effective than giving that money to Ibram Kendi. I could have told you that.
I'm gonna go close to wrapping up so I can go walk Charlie the dog. But I wanted to show you
yeah.
some of the memes that I showed at the beginning before you popped on. These were kind of funny. The Lotus Eaters showed them today. Did you see some of them? Somebody took AI, the new AI generators, and started making memes of what is it?
Norman Rockwell.
Norman Rockwell about like the George Floyd. That's the Norman Rockwell George Floyd riots.
Oh, we don't need copyright anymore.
I
We
like
have
all the
AI.
clapping white people. I know.
Yeah, no, they're all smiling. Look, everybody's happy.
This is the AI that generates it too.
Yeah, no, the AI is picking up on something, obviously.
There's a Norman Rockwell crazy cat lady. He's pretty like that. He's got 700 cats and a wine. I don't know what they called it.
At least none of the cats are growing out of somebody's torso or something.
There's a Norman Rockwell incel basement dweller computer guy who just eats all the slop and plays the video games.
Wow.
Yeah. They're pretty amazing looking.
Yeah, they really are. Jesus.
There's a Norman Rockwell family walking around unhoused.
This is hilarious. It's perfect.
This is the one I had as our cover thing. But that's why I put this as a Leatherbys. Like this is our this was part of our thing. But I put Ozempic in the hands of that waiter dude saying, here's some Ozempic.
Oh, that's funny. That was also funny just because like 2 days ago in the private group, Jared's talking about people at work where they're like I'm having stomach problems and I don't know why, as they take their Ozempic.
Yeah.
And then just today, I got a news alert from CNN like doctors are linking Ozempic with gastric problems. Like, oh, go figure.
Yeah, I mean, how couldn't it? I mean, you got this drug that's just suddenly like hands over fist, like having people lose weight, and it's one of those things. We've talked about him before. Rob Henderson, who always talks about luxury beliefs and luxury stuff. All of those luxury belief pusher, fat people, whatever, guarantee nowadays. Some lady who goes pushing that and saying that to you somewhere, ask them if they're on Ozempic. I bet you they're on Ozempic. I bet you most of the luxury believers are taking that stuff. Because they're rich upper class snooty douches. Tent City, Norman Rockwell. Oh man. Here's a women's racing champion.
I like the one lady crying. She's so proud. Wow.
Old FBI agents with a he him
and then
on it.
Weird, not English.
FEMA trains, but old timey Norman Rockwell looking. FEMA re-education camp. Yeah. The FBI spying on a dude on the toilet. Man, Norman Rockwell, I kind of like him. I always like the way stuff looked. It was maybe a little bit idealistic or something, but I don't know. I don't know enough about painting. I bet you really good painters would call him hack or something. Yeah, that was kind of obvious. The devil making the wow, I don't know what that one's about. Oh, wait a minute. Yakub.
Oh,
this is
oh my gosh! Wow,
this is the
good job,
invention of
AI.
white people from the. Oh my
It even kind of has the big head. His head should probably be bigger, according to Fard Muhammad. But
I didn't pick that up at first.
yeah, no, because in the book he describes them as having like giant, like alien gray heads, but they were black.
Oh man. Oh, there's the Richmond, North Richmond thing who's saying about the welfare queens.
I wonder how much that guy's gonna take off of his femininity.
Did you see about this stuff? Like this thing is like,
what is this?
So there's this whole thing about Indians in London are going to the bathroom on the streets. So they made this thing of like the white European English lady brought the toilet to the Indians.
Wow.
That's
'Cause I read the BBC every day, and they have not reported on that. But I guess that's.
You haven't heard about that? I've seen that floating around
No.
somewhere.
Well, it's kind of because, like, there's a thing in America you run into, like in places where there's a lot of migrant Mexican labor, and they don't flush their toilet paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true of Latin America places all the time, because like there's places that if you they know instinctively that if you go up the hill there's less water pressure, so you don't flush the toilet if you're up a hill.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Evil Western colonialism with their
we got
flushing toilets. Yeah.
I'm from like I mean, I heard he's short somewhere too. I heard he had a squeaky voice, but I might be mixing that up with hearing that about Abraham Lincoln.
Physical appearance. The New Testament offers little, if any, information about the physical appearance of Paul, but several descriptions can be found in apocryphal texts. In the Acts of Paul, he is described as a man of small stature with a bald head and crooked legs in a good state of body, with eyebrows meeting, he had unibrow, and a nose somewhat hooked. In the Latin version of Acts of Paul in Thecla, it is added that he had a red, florid face. So the Apocrypha, I was wondering, like, where do we get
so like I never would have read it reading the books that I read back then.
No.
But is that Apocrypha anti-Semitic? About time to call it good. We made it to the 3 horas. And Charlie's staring at me down the
Charlie
way.
dog. And I haven't fed Bucket yet, and she's not even yelling at me.
Yeah, so it's time to get going. Thanks for chilling and hanging, everybody. And we learned so much. We had so much fun, and we worked out our demons.
Jared should recover from his hangover by
Don't
next
take
year.
counsel from us more. Nobody's going to take counsel from us anyway. But hey, wait a minute. There's a paradox right there. Don't take counsel from us.
Yeah.
Is that counsel from us to not take counsel from us?
Don't send us money. Don't send us money, and don't take our counsel.
I wouldn't take counsel from us either, though.
I would take restaurant recommendations from us.
Oh yeah, that's
something you can take from us. Film, yeah, but like, what should you do with your dick? Don't listen to me. I don't.
Yeah, how to be moral with that thing? We have no idea.
Yeah.
We're just.
Should you pay your taxes? I don't have to. All righty.
All righty.
Cool.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.